Well, welcome to race fans all over the world on Facebook Live and on YouTube on Short Track TV. I'm Stephen Blakesley bringing you the festivities from the Meritage Resort in Napa, California for the 2018 West Coast Stock Car Hall of Fame. What an honor that Ken Clapp and the gang at the West Coast Stock Car Hall of Fame have invited us here so we can get all dressed up. It's a little different than being at Madera Speedway, but very excited to be here. And we're starting things off joined by a couple of celebrities in their own right, as there's going to be a lot of dignitaries here today. We're inducting a total of 11 people into the West Coast Stock Car Hall of Fame, 6 Hall of Fame inductees and 5 inductees that are from pre-1971, making up that 11 driver and car owner and media person class, whole wide variety of people. But let's introduce to you some guys that our Madera race fans should be very familiar with. To my left right here, Austin Herzog, our RPM Mortgage Pro Late Model Series points leader at only 15 years old. And to his left, his cousin Tyler Herzog, who is currently in second place in our Madera late model points. And Austin, we'll start with you. What does it mean to be invited here to the Hall of Fame and just soaking up this awesome atmosphere here, right?
I'm honored to be here. I'm glad Kenny Shepard put this on for us. It should be a good test to see what we're going to have to do later on and get to shake some hands and meet some new people.
So tell us about your season. You don't have a win this year, but it's such a tough series this year with the RPM series. So to be the points leader is really a testament to your consistency, right?
Yeah, there's a bunch of tough people this year, and we're getting the car closer and closer. So hopefully in 2 weeks we can get it that much closer and get that race win.
And I understand you guys are planning to be here all weekend. Of course, this coincides with the NASCAR Monster Energy Cup Series stuff going on at Sonoma Raceway. So you must be looking forward to being a part of that, too.
Yeah, I've never been here, so it should be a blast. So, check it out and, meet some new people, and, that's what it's all about.
Well, thanks for being here, and one of our recipients of a table here as part of his points performance. Later on, we're going to be talking to Jesse Love, our 5150 Energy Drink Junior Late Model points leader, who was also given a spot here at the Stock Car Hall of Fame. And we're going to slide over here and talk to Tyler Herzog. And you got to thank Austin a little bit for your points performance this year, because he's done a lot of work to dial in that race car, hasn't he?
Yeah, he raced my car down at Orange Show. He kind of tuned it up a little bit. We were having brake problems. I have to thank Kenny Shepard so much for letting us come down here and supporting my sponsors, Crown Homes and Herzog Roofing. Just being able to be here and meet all these people, it really means a lot.
Yeah, it's a great atmosphere. And by the way, that race where Austin drove Tyler's car is on MAV TV airing this week. It's the Greg Ross Memorial. And a little spoiler that Austin was second place in that race, and he had never been to Orange Show Speedway before. So you must be really looking forward to the rest of the season, Tyler, and maybe looking forward for a win as well.
Yeah, I'm hoping to get a couple wins in the local Madera late models and hopefully get a win up in the RPM Mortgage, because we got a new car, and hopefully that'll help us succeed in the future with the RPM series and be up there with Austin.
Well, Kenny, a couple of Herzog names. Of course, the Herzog name has been around Madera Speedway for a long time, and we're going to take an opportunity to wander around and find some more people to speak to. But Austin Herzog and Tyler Herzog here at the West Coast Stock Car Hall of Fame. Well, we didn't have to go very far for our next special guest. Second place in the 5150 Junior Late Model Series, Dylan Zampa. And, a lot of the people here, Dylan, are staying at the hotel, but you live really close to this racetrack. Or to this hotel. How close do you live to here?
We live about 10 minutes away. We go down the highway and then take the first off, and we're, right there.
So that's pretty nice. You guys are used to making that 5 to 6 hour trip down to Madera every week. So it's nice to have some home cooking. You've had a pretty up and down season, couple of wins, couple of DNFs. Tell us about your season so far.
Well, the first race we started off with a whole brand new car from last year, and we've made up some good progress. We got the car really fast in practice, and then came to the race, we just blew away. Our car was super fast, and then the second race we had some complications in the rear end. Then the third race, horrible crash with the 38 and the 43. Was hoping to be a good three-car battle, but they came up short and we took home the win.
So you and your brother have been working hard to try to move up in the racing ranks for a long time. What does it mean to you and your family to have this opportunity to be here today at the Stock Car Hall of Fame?
It's really cool to see a lot of people who have been racing for a lot of years and see newcomer drivers like us come here to see what goes on here.
So we probably have some people tuning into our Facebook or to Short Track TV that have never seen the Junior Late Model Series. What is that like being, you're 13 years old, right?
14.
14. So what is that like being a 14-year-old racing a full-size stock car against kids from all over the country? It's a pretty exciting deal, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very cool to have that experience.
Tell us some of the sponsors you want to thank.
I want to thank Superior Bearings. They give us all the bearings in our car. CSI, which is our biggest sponsor, they do our shocks. Allied Auto, and my dad and my mom.
Well, good luck to this guy the rest of the season. Dylan Zampa, thanks for being here. Our driver, second in the points in our Junior Late Model Series with 2 wins this year, and we'll throw it back to you guys. Well, we're wandering around here at the West Coast Stock Car Hall of Fame. Lots of great people on hand, but we couldn't miss this guy here, Herschel McGriff, in the house. And what does it mean to you to be a part of this West Coast Stock Car Hall of Fame?
Well, it means a lot because I was inducted the first year. So that was quite a thrill for me. I don't know, what's that, like 10 or 12 years ago, however they've had this going. And of course, I have so many friends, so I try to come every year because some of these guys are getting older and some of them are gone. And at least the ones that are gone, we like to honor. And it's just great to see old friends because next year some of these guys won't be here. Maybe I won't be here. Who knows? I'm hoping to go to 100. I'm just 90 now. So.
Well, and I understand you made a stock car start this year at Tucson in the K&N West Series. What was that experience like?
Yeah, that was just, it was May the 5th. And, it was kind of a thing. My granddaughter races there at Tucson. My son races a late model. And so Bill McAnally, who has, several teams, he offered me this ride about a year ago for my 90th birthday. So he furnished the car and everything. So it was quite a thrill. I didn't do too good in the race. I don't think we tried very hard, but at least I ran 100 laps and at 90 and at 97 degrees, it's not too bad.
Well, and you even participate in the national anthem, right?
Did I say that again?
You even participate in the national anthem, is right?
Well, I have a bucket list, and I heard a soldier play the national anthem at a cup race in Phoenix 4 or 5 years, and he was so good, and I thought, I can do that on my trombone. I wouldn't sound as good as him, so I hadn't played my trombone for 21 years when I got married the last time. And so I took one lesson to kind of get up on what to do, and I practiced every day for a couple months. And I think I was more nervous about playing the national anthem than I was the race car. But it was fun. Everybody enjoyed it. Had people from all over come in to see us, and it was a great evening, a great weekend.
And the last thing that I wanted to ask you about was this class this year, the inductees this year. A lot of them raced in the West Series kind of around the time that you were a mainstay in that series. Do you have any stories you can share about any of our inductees today?
Did I say that?
Any stories you can share about our inductees from today?
Well, there probably is. I can't take any right off. But I know Bill Cheeseburg is getting inducted. And, of course, Bill was, I guess he was, he raced Indy cars. And, of course, I moved to Tucson, and I heard a lot about him. One time I raced with him on a dirt track in Phoenix. That's the only time. And I had borrowed a car to run the race because I had promised the promoter I would come in. And I was sitting on the pole, and I looked over, and there was Bill Cheeseburg. And he's a big guy, And he was just sitting there. He didn't turn his head or anything. And I thought, as pauper as that guy is, at least I got to beat him into the first corner, which I did. I don't know how the race come out. My car wasn't very good. But he was a great guy, very popular in that area in his day.
Now, I noticed, although this is a stock car Hall of Fame, I noticed that a lot of our inductees dabbled in Indy cars. Were you ever thinking about Indy cars? Did you ever attempt anything with open wheel cars?
No, I started racing when I was 17, and for some reason, I always told myself I was going to stick with a car with fenders. And I had a lot of offers for Indy cars. Rollo Volstead was one of the popular guys that had an Indy car every year, and he was after me all the time to drive one of his cars. I just stayed out of it. We became great friends, and bless his heart, he died about 6 months ago at 99. And but all through the years, I enjoyed him, but I just stayed out of him. And back in the day when they wanted me to drive, it was dangerous. There was a lot of them that was the front engine cars in them days. And, if you had a wreck, it was bad. And I had a family with kids, and I've always worked with a job, and the racing's always been weekends, and my family's always been involved, pretty much.
Well, we really appreciate your time, and have a great evening tonight reminiscing with everyone. I know this is probably a day you look forward to every year.
Oh, I do. And, of course, Kenny Clapp, who heads this thing off, he rode with me on my motorcycle, my trike, in the Kyle Petty charity run about a month ago. So I imagine he's going to talk about that tonight because he had a great time. And, there's 150 bikes with like 225 people. So it's quite a deal. And they raised $1,300,000 just on that one ride. So I'm glad to be part of it. And this is my third year.
Well, Herschel, you're staying very busy, and thanks for spending some time with us, and we'll throw it back to you guys. Well, we're back here at the West Coast Stock Car Hall of Fame in Napa, California, standing by Dick Woodland, another one of our inductees this year. And I know your name more from your auto museum down in Paso Robles, but tell us a little bit more about your racing background as well.
Well, I started out when I was a teenager building jalopies and tried racing and modified the old NASCAR circuits, San Jose, Fresno, that type thing. And then it was the sprint cars at Ascot. Then I figured out I could hire better drivers, and I became a car owner. Eventually, I had a son that was bound determined he's going to race. So we thought, well, we'll go the NASCAR, the stock car route. And we ended up back at Charlotte, and I lost two of my sons to the south. They stayed back. We shut down the team when the recession hit, but they stayed back in the Charlotte area and enjoying that. But they're here tonight.
So how important was weekly track racing to what you guys were all about?
I'm sorry.
How important was weekly track racing to what you guys did?
Yeah, no, that was the key to it. Absolutely. The short track, the weekly racing led up to it.
So what would you say was kind of your guys' home track or home series?
Oh,
You kind of bounce around.
Yeah, we really do. Depends with the stock car. Well, Fontana would be the closest to home, I guess, or Bill Mesa Marine Speedway. And as far as the sprint cars, I still look at Ascot as, that was home.
Absolutely. Tell us a little bit more about your museum and the stuff you have going on down south.
Okay, it's a Woodland auto display. It's at the Estrella Warbird Museum at the Paso Robles Airport. And I have a cross-section, things of interest for everyone. There's some sports cars, street rods, vintage cars. Then I have a NASCAR room. I have a open wheel room. It's a lot of midgets, super modified sprint cars. So there's something for everyone, as they say.
Yeah, I've heard wonderful things about it. So is that museum open year round?
It's open Thursdays through Sundays every week, 10 to 4.
So in this part of the woods, of course, we're right down the street from Sonoma Raceway, or Sears Point, as you guys probably would call it. Do you have any history or memories of being a part of things at Sears Point?
Well, we raced there quite a bit. My son did driving. We started a team originally Winston West with Ron Hornaday. And then my son, the one son, Rich Jr., took over the driving. And, we ran several times at Sears Point. And even airmailed. I think we had the last Oldsmobile to get NASCAR points. And he finished it off, I think, turn 10 or whatever. Landed out in the parking lot, and that's the end of that one. But most of our memories there were good.
Well, that's some trivia right there. So that's the last Oldsmobile at Sears Point was you guys. So
On display.
that's pretty cool. I'd love to come and see that. So, Dick, we really appreciate your time and congratulations on being inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Appreciate it very much.
All right, we'll send it back to you guys. We're going to go grab some more interviews here at the West Coast Stock Car Hall of Fame. Well, back here to the West Coast Stock Car Hall of Fame 2018 in Napa, California. And standing by a guy that I've kind of looked up to for a long time, so this is exciting for me. He started at Roseville's All-American Speedway just like I did, and where I announced a little bit now. Standing by with Roush Sheheen. And if we were to try to list off all the things that you currently do in motorsports, we would be late for dinner, right? So just tell us what it means to be a part of this event and to be emceeing this event tonight.
Well, it's a real honor and a lot of fun. You know, growing up out here in Northern California, kid from Sacramento, to be invited to be a part of the board of directors for the Hall of Fame was a tremendous honor. I look forward to coming out and emceeing this event every year because I get to see so many friends, so many people I grew up in the racing community with out here, and to be a part of this event is just a lot of fun. It is really growing each and every year.
So you get to come back to California for an event like this, even though it's only for a couple of days. You were telling me after today you got to fly back somewhere. What are some of the things that are kind of on your to-do list whenever you come back to California?
Well, you know, I'm lucky in that my racing schedule brings me back a few times every year for events at like Supercross down in Oakland or events at Sonoma Raceway or down at Laguna Seca. So I get numerous opportunities to come home. And even if I get close to the zone, I always zip into Sacramento and spend a couple of days with friends and family and do a lot of different things, whether it's going to a race at a place I haven't been to, like out at All-American, or just visiting buddies at race shops and calling up old friends from high school. So I always make sure that I don't just come in and go right out. Like yesterday, I got home early and went over to the American River and hung out, you know, just checked it all out where I grew up and saw some friends for dinner.
Well, it's amazing to see how this event has grown. This year we have 11 inductees, which is amazing. And when you go through the program, the number of advertisers and people that are helping support this event is immense, immeasurable. Can you speak a little bit to just how you've seen this Hall of Fame grow in the last couple of years?
Yeah, it's really kind of crazy to think about it. And I think it shows the importance of what it means to the racing community as to who's here. I mean, look, Ryan Blaney's right over our shoulder here. Dave Wilson, who heads up racing for Toyota, will be here tonight. Dignitaries from all over the racing industry, not just from California or the West Coast, but the entire industry are coming here to be a part of this. We're going to have some 375 people having dinner with us tonight. It really shows, I think, what this event means to the racing industry, certainly on the West Coast.
And to see the way it has grown without really having a permanent physical home also makes it pretty exciting as well.
It does, and we've talked about that a little bit on our board. You know, what do we do? Where would we put that? We've talked about maybe trying some technology and maybe making that permanent home something digital that fans all around the world could access and visit whenever they wanted to. Or maybe we put some plaques at a place like Phoenix or Auto Club. You know, there's a lot to think about there before we actually do that.
So what's next on your calendar the rest of the year? You said you were flying out of here after today, so what's next on your calendar?
I got Formula E, I've got NASCAR Modifieds, I got AMA Flat Track, I've got K&N races, I've got Monster Energy Cup in Las Vegas coming up. We've got a bunch of stuff, and I'll be back out here for the Vintage Race Monterey Car Week coming up, of course, and Porsche Rennsport down in Monterey as well in August and then September. And I got the Knoxville Nationals coming. Plus, of course, with Speed Sport, I'm so busy with that. Of course, got Speed Sport and Sprint Car Midget Magazine going, and we're doing 26 TV shows there for MAV TV with our Suzuki Presents Speed Sport series every Thursday. So we're pretty busy.
This guy's so busy, I don't want to keep him any longer. Ralph Sheheen, we appreciate everything you've done for West Coast with stock car racing, and I hope for a great night tonight.
Thanks. It's great seeing everybody out here, you included, and hopefully all the folks watching out there will enjoy it, and maybe they'll get a chance to come visit us here at the banquet in the coming years.
Once again, guys, Ralph Sheheen, thanks for your time, and we're going to throw it back to you guys and go grab a couple more interviews. Thanks a lot again. Thank you. Back here at the 2018 West Coast Stock Car Hall of Fame, and one of the things that we've been emphasizing today is how many drivers in this class started their careers at weekly racetracks like this guy right here, Orrin Prosser. And I was reading up on your history, and it seemed to me like you made a big name for yourself at the weekly level racing at places like Saugus. Tell us about that.
Well, no, I'm not Orrin Prosser.
Oh, this is well, you can't cut because we're live, and that's about the biggest pie in the face moment I can have, right? So I apologize, Mr. Kearns. You know what's funny about that? Here's the thing that happens in the social media world is that what happens in the social media world is I actually follow you on Twitter, but I've never met you in person. And so it's an honor to meet you, of course, a part of the board here at the West Coast Stock Car Hall of Fame. And you guys have been involved with this Hall of Fame all the way down to the beginning grassroots of it. And one of the things we were talking to Ralph Sheheen about is how this has grown in the last couple of years. Of course, 11 inductees today. Speak to how it has grown in the last couple of years.
Well, we started out down in Southern California and at a hotel down in Monrovia, San Gabriel Valley, and I don't know, probably 25, 30 people there, maybe a few more than that. But when we were able to come up here and really get to a nice place like the Meritage and get the industry really involved in the Hall of Fame inductions, that we're happy to have Gateway Motorsports Park presenting tonight. It's grown, and we'll probably have about 400 people here this evening.
And like we were speaking with Ralph, is you guys don't really have a permanent home per se, although you've kind of etched out a home here at the Meritage with the event. And so what does that say about the draw of this event to have this kind of turnout when you guys do this every year?
Well, we do have a virtual Hall of Fame, which is on our website, and Halls of Fames are pretty expensive to operate, and that is not to say that we won't have a brick-and-mortar Hall of Fame someday, but right now we're just happy to be online. But I think that the industry, particularly the folks, manufacturers such as Ford, General Motors, Toyota, they see the history that's brought the sport to where it is today, and they want to celebrate it along with us because they know that the real hardcore fans know who these drivers from the past that built the industry are.
So even with 11 inductees, which seems like a big class, how tough is it to narrow it down to 11?
Well, we'll start out with 100, 200 names, all of whom are deserving, and getting to the 20 nominees to cut it all the way down, that's very, very difficult. Very difficult.
Yeah, so you must take a lot of pride in seeing the finished product and being here tonight.
Oh, absolutely. This is one of the biggest, best events that I attend all year.
Well, Owen Kearns, I apologize for the intro at the beginning, but it is a true honor to meet you, and thanks for everything you've done to grow this Hall of Fame.
Very much.
Well, we're going to throw it back to you guys and look for some more interviews here at the West Coast Stock Car Hall of Fame. Well, back to the 2018 West Coast Stock Car Hall of Fame. We definitely know who this guy is. Rick Carelli joining us, and this is a pretty exciting night for you and your career when you look at some of these guys being inducted today, right? Someone that's very special to you.
That's true. Joe Garone got inducted this year for us. Marshall Chesron did it, was my owner in 2014, and I got inducted in 2009. So the whole band kind of got together, and it's pretty self-gratifying for myself.
So this has been a pretty amazing event for your career in the last couple of years. Like you said, seeing all those different people get inducted. And can you speak to how the Hall of Fame has grown in the last couple of years? Like, they're expecting almost 400 people here tonight. So a pretty awesome turnout today.
Well, I think it's pretty awesome the way that everybody's got recognized. You know, a lot of times when we ran on the West Coast, when I did it, a lot of people said, well, West Coast, East Coast, you know. But a lot of the West Coasters went down south and ended up making it pretty big down there. And, you know, you took all the people from Bakersfield and El Cajon and all that, and they're running championships down there. And anybody that came to the West Coast always knew we were here. And years ago when we had to compete, we competed with the Winston Cup Series at Phoenix, so we had to qualify our way in to actually end up racing in the Winston West. So it was a great time for all of us, actually.
That's always a topic in stock car racing today is, you know, like this weekend in the NASCAR West Series, there are 5 Cup Series drivers competing in that event. And some people look at that and they kind of look at that as being unusual. But when you were racing, that was commonplace, right?
No, it was obviously that's what we did. We tried to go down south and make some races and show what we had. We knew we were a little from behind. Everything we had here on the West Coast, we had a lot of smaller racetracks that we ran on. You know, we got to run Riverside years ago, and we also got to run Fontana years ago when we actually went down there. So it was exciting for us. When we went back east, we knew how much more we had to gain. So a lot of the people that we hired to run our team or help our team, we got a lot of knowledge from them, and we came out and we ended up dominating a lot of races.
So, of course, we're just down the road from Sears Point, or Sonoma Raceway as they're calling it now. Tell us a little bit about your history racing at Sonoma.
Well, I was very fortunate. I ran the Southwest Tour the first time they raced out there, and I think we used to run turn 11, then all the way up to turn 7, ran the drag strip all the way up. Then I had an opportunity to come back in 1994 and made a cup race out here when we ran it, and then ran a lot of Winston West races here when we did it. And then I ran the trucks out here when the trucks used to come out here all the time. So Sonoma is a very tricky place. It's very fun. You know, it's unusual compared to every other racetrack that we have as a road course. So it's very challenging, and it'll get your attention.
What's it like trying to get a truck to go around a road course? And that wasn't the only road course you guys ran, with like Heartland Park and some other places like that. So what was that like trying to get a truck to go around a road course?
Well, it was, a truck and a car. They drive a little bit different. But, I mean, once you bolt in there, you still got the cage around you, make it happen. You try and get, the forward bite that you need with the trucks, and you get an opportunity to keep it turning. So it was something that we relied on what we had prior when we ran the West car to come out here and make the truck run. So it was fun. We had a blast. A lot of trucks showed up. Like I said, we ran Portland Road Course, Watkins Glen years ago. But Sonoma has always been one of my favorites. It's either feast or famine. I've never had an opportunity to win there, but I busted my butt a few times there too, so I know what it's like. I wish they still ran the carousel in it, which I think it takes a little bit away from what the racetrack is now. But, it's the way it is.
So I think the last thing that I wanted to ask you about is NASCAR Touring Series were so important to your career with the Southwest Tour and the Truck Series. And there's a lot of discussion about kind of what the roadmap will be for NASCAR at the touring level going into the future. Just how important do you think it is to have Touring Series at the NASCAR level?
Well, I think it's very important. I think it's a stepping stone to learn how you work your way up the ladder, and if you get an opportunity to come out here and run for a championship and get recognized, you got the best on the West, on the East. When I did it, I think there was 4 touring series that we used to run, and we all got together, and everybody would have like a shootout at certain times. But I think that platform is just a stepping stone. As it's changed now to the K&N West, the cars are a little bit different, but you still can run the K&N cars down south and go down there and race. So I think it's a stepping stone and a platform. So, when you look at it, as you step with the K&N, you can step maybe to the trucks, bounce yourself back and forth, maybe some ARCA races, and then just work your way up. And, if you get the right opportunity, the right people to make it happen, you're off and running.
Well, Rick, we want to thank you for your time. It's not too bad when the car owner, the crew chief, and the driver all go into the Hall of Fame. So, Rick Carelli, once again, thanks for your time, and we're going to be back in just a little bit here from the 2018 West Coast Stock Car Hall of Fame. Well, back to the 2018 West Coast Stock Car Hall of Fame, and this will be a pretty fun interview because we have our points leader in the Junior Late Model Series at Madera, Jesse Love, and then we also have Ryan Blaney from the NASCAR Monster Energy Series. And Ryan, first of all, what brings you here to the West Coast Stock Car Hall of Fame?
Well, we raced at Sears Point this weekend, so we just flew in a little bit ago, and I've never been to this event before, so I was asked to come, so I figured I'd come check it out and meet some racers, former and current, and it's a cool event. I'm excited for it to all get started.
So we have a driver to your left that's 13 years old. He already has one late model title under his belt, going for his second one this year. And I think you're someone that can probably relate to that because you started running like pro late models at a very young age, right?
I did, yeah. I started doing super late model stuff with the past series when I was 13 or 14, so about your age. I didn't have a title when I was 13 years old, but that's what I started, and I love pavement late models. That's what I grew up doing in North Carolina, Georgia, South Carolina, Virginia, and they were a great tool to kind of get you ready. That's really the first full-body stock car you get in with a lot of power and some of these tracks that are a little bit bigger. So I learned a lot in them, and it's cool to see it thriving still. and cool to meet some kids who are doing very well, being very successful, and you're racing a lot of other different things too, which is I think is the best thing. Race as many cars as you can.
Yeah, and speaking of that, Jesse, of course, you lead the junior late model points, but like Ryan was alluding to, you're running a little bit of dirt this year too, right?
Yeah, and for example, this weekend we weren't running anything, but I got a ride and we're going to run a sprint car at Petaluma, and we're doing pretty good in sprint cars, and we're getting close to that win on both the sprint cars and the midgets, and we're not far off the point lead in the midgets. I think we're second place overall, so it's a really cool deal, and I think some of the best racing is on the West Coast in dirt racing.
So have you ever been driven to get onto the dirt? Have you done some dirt stuff before?
Only a little bit. With my dad and grandfather doing a bunch of dirt racing, people automatically think that's what I grew up doing, and that's really not the case. I grew up in North Carolina when we moved there when I was about 5, when my dad started driving NASCAR, and there's no dirt tracks really around there. That's not really dirt country. It was more asphalt late models, and I've only driven them a handful of times, and I'm not really allowed to these days, but I'd love to do them. My dad's doing All-Stars full-time this year, and I love watching him race. I try to make it to as many as I can, but it's something I would like to do whenever I can get a chance to go run them, or maybe when I'm retired and done with NASCAR, I can go do that. But I love watching them. I just wish I could run them a little bit more.
See, a lot of people look at the calendar that you guys have with 36 races, basically 38 weeks of racing, and they think about how intense that is. But really, like your dad with the sprint cars, they're in the middle of the Ohio Sprint Week, and of course Jesse with all the things that he does. It seems like all of us that are really entrenched in the sport, it's an everyday thing, isn't it?
It really is. It's just different series, different types of race cars. They have different schedules. You'll have, like you said, our series that run 38 times a year, and sprint cars, if you're on the Outlaws, you can run 70 or 80. It's just, there's some folks who try to get over 100, and that's pretty amazing to me. It's just a weekly thing. You talk about Ohio Speed Weeks, and they're racing 9 times and 10 nights, I think, and that part's just really cool. So no matter what day of the week, you always find some racing somewhere.
Well, and Jesse, as we're standing here with a guy like Ryan Blaney, I was wondering if there's anything that you would like to ask him when it comes to advice for your career.
Yeah, so obviously with having age restrictions and all that stuff, holding you back, and what do you think the best advice is, moving forward and kind of moving up the ladder?
Yeah, I think that age restriction thing it can be a bummer sometimes, and you think you're ready and you want to move up as fast as you can. But I thought something that we did as a family together, when me and my dad were trying to figure out what we're going to do, we took our time with a lot of stuff, whether it was driving late models or K&N cars, ARCA, or even staying in the truck series or Xfinity series maybe a year or two longer than we wanted to. I think it just gains your experience, and another part of that is racing as much as you can. You're doing that right now in all forms of dirt racing, asphalt racing, different types of cars. You look at other drivers, Tony Stewart, Jeff Gordon, Larson, they all come from dirt racing and then running asphalt stuff as well, and I think that just widens your knowledge of different race cars and your race knowledge. So I think being patient and then driving as much as you can, I think, is the 2 best advice.
Yeah. Ryan, when you were coming up through the ranks with all that navigating the system, kind of like you were describing, did you really end up doing a lot of points racing, or was it kind of just a race here, a race there?
Yeah, we did a little bit of points racing, a couple years in the late model stuff and past, but never in the K&N stuff. Never did any points in that. We just did a handful of races a year, and I ran for points a couple years in Brad's truck series, or in his trucks. But then there was a year I never ran Xfinity full-time. I kind of bounced around with that, and never really a full-time ride. And then the Cup stuff now, obviously, we're going for the points deal. But, yeah, there was a long period where we weren't really doing any points racing, just try to drive as much as we can, from trucks to Xfinity to a handful of Cup races here and there. But that just kind of goes back to what I said of trying to drive as many cars as possible. Track time and seat time are so big, no matter what series or cars, it's just, you can't beat it.
We can't thank you enough for your time, Ryan. And Jesse Love, good luck in 2018. And talking about a guy that's doing well in NASCAR now and a guy that would like to be there with Ryan Blaney and Jesse Love. Back to you guys. Welcome back to the 2018 West Coast Stock Car Hall of Fame from Napa, California. And we thought we'd find someone that we know pretty well. Erick Holmes, of course, multi-time winner of the short track shootout. What brings you here to Napa today?
Well, I come here every year to the West Coast Hall of Fame dinner. It's been a great honor. I've been invited. It's probably my 10th year of coming to it, and I've been all over. So since they moved it to Sonoma, Napa area, this weekend's been a lot of fun. We've had it in Irwindale and LA, and those were fun. But definitely this weekend with all the Cup people and the affiliation and people like you guys coming out and closer to home. So, and then this year, my daughter is actually the trophy presenter. So we have another affiliation this year. So just glad to be here, and it's always a lot of fun.
And we heard there's going to be close to 400 people today. So you're someone that can probably speak to how you've seen that grow as well, right?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like every year it's grown a lot, especially since they moved it here. And since they moved it here on a Thursday night before the Cup weekend, it's really been a great thing. And it's been a lot of fun and seen a lot of friends, from the East Coast I don't always get to chat with at the racetrack. And, this year my buddy Ryan Blaney's here, and Michael Waltrip's always here, and they're always fun to talk with and mingle with. And it's great for what Madera Speedway's doing for their young drivers, bringing them here. So just a great event.
And so many people here, like you said, that you're connected to. And one of the things that kind of ties us all together is Sears Point and Sonoma Raceway. And you've had a lot of history and a lot of success there yourself, right?
Yeah, it's definitely probably one of my favorite races. I look forward to this weekend every year. And as a driver, I won the pole 3 or 4 times. I led a ton of laps. Unfortunately, never won a race. Came so close many times. And I always tell McAnally had they had these halftime breaks when I was driving, we probably would have won a lot because fuel strategy was always a problem when we raced them. But, when I used to come to these dinners, I had to drink water and not have as good a time. Now I can drink a little Sonoma wine, Napa wine, and have a little better time and come and spot tomorrow for Derek Kraus and doing the Cup weekend this also.
Yeah, so it's kind of a cool thing today because we have all the inductees that are kind of the retired drivers, retired car owners. And then on the flip side, we have the young guys that are here as guests of Madera and some current drivers like Ryan Blaney. And what do you think that these young guys can learn from being a part of an event like this?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I wish there was something I could have come to this when I was younger, and meet all these people. But, the biggest thing, it's hard for, I was just with Brian Herzog, and he's trying to get his kid out there, and Austin's a great kid, and they just got to learn to they got to go mingle and talk to people. And as a young kid, that's hard to do, but it's a great opportunity, and they just got to show their personalities and so the people will remember them and see their talents when they watch it on Mad TV and stuff. So I know a lot of people that watch these races. They might not watch them on purpose, but it's on enough, and people will call me like, hey, I just saw you won, and I'm like, yeah, well, that was last year, but it's cool that people are watching, and it's great that Kenny's done a good job at Madera Speedway and yourself and MAV TV, and it gives these guys recognition, and it's really fun to see.
I mean, that feeling firsthand of going back to when you were 16 years old, trying to get started, and how exciting that was, but also how daunting it was, right?
Yeah, definitely, and it's tough. I mean, I was fortunate. I got to go to North Carolina right out of high school, but at the same time, I wasn't a nobody, so it's hard to get in them circles, and things have changed a lot nowadays, but definitely an event like this for the young guys. You just got to get out there and just talk to guys like Michael Waltrip. You never know. He might watch MAV TV on a Thursday night, and on Saturday he might be telling you how great you are. So, you just got to get up there and talk to him. Michael's a great guy to talk to, and Ryan Blaney, all these guys are good people. So
the last thing I have to ask you, will you be at Madera for the 10,000 win short track shootout this year?
I plan on it. A lot of things have changed lately, but the Nostradamus are a great group of guys, and we're on board right now to run that race. And we're on board to run a bunch of races throughout the winter. And, we keep hearing about this Copper World Classic coming back, and that's definitely on our radar also.
Yeah, it's definitely something we're thinking about as well. Well, Erick Holmes, we thank you for your time. And the guy that we call Mr. October, the multi-time short track shootout winner. And we'll throw it back to you guys. We're back to the 2018 West Coast Stock Car Hall of Fame, standing by with one of our inductees, Clyde Prickett. And Clyde, we wanted to take this opportunity to introduce you to some of these drivers.
Go ahead.
Tell Clyde who you are.
My name is Jesse Love. I run for Toyota in the late model deal for with Kenny Shepard in the Junior Late Model Series. And so far, we're leading the points. And last year, we won the championship in it. I also run dirt midgets and sprint cars as well, and also pavement midgets. And we're second in points in the midgets too. So it's a pretty good season.
And then we want to slide over here and introduce these guys too as well. So Clyde will introduce you to Dylan Zampa. He's second in our junior late model point standings. And then right here we have Austin Herzog, who leads our pro late model standings. And you can tell he's not a whole lot older than these guys. He's only 15 years old. And then his cousin Tyler Herzog, who is second in our weekly late model points. So it's really amazing, Clyde, when you see all of these young folks here to support the guys like you that sort of blaze the trail. What does it mean to you to have young drivers like this here at the Hall of Fame to support you guys?
Well, it's one of the greatest things that's happened to racing, and that's about the best thing that I can say in that regards, yes.
And what does it mean to you to be inducted into the Hall of Fame?
I didn't hear you.
What does it mean to you that you're getting inducted into the Hall of Fame this year?
It's something that I had never done or thought could be done or would be done. Because we used to race many nights a week, and they don't no more. So it was a full-time job at work to feed the kids, and it was a good-time job doing it. And NASCAR's been outstanding all along.
And your family, of course, is still very heavily involved in racing. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. It's same as normal things where you'd need money, and that's something he don't have, and he tries the best he can, and he's improving all the time.
So what does it mean to you to see that we have an 11-person class this year? It's a lot of people going into the Hall of Fame, probably a lot of people that you raced with and are pretty familiar with. So what does it mean to see all your friends getting inducted into the Hall of Fame as well?
Oh, that's great. Everything is great there, too. Shaking hands with a lot of fellas that I haven't seen in years. Can't remember who they are. but like I told one of them anymore, when we don't know for sure, just stand there with a smile.
Well, I think we all have to do that a little bit. There's no name tags today. I've already made a few mistakes on a couple of names, so you're totally forgiven there. It's an honor to get to meet you, and it'll be an honor to see you up on stage later today. And thank you for doing an interview with us.
Well, thank you and everything you're doing. It's great.
Thanks a lot. How about that? Clyde Prickett, one of our 11 inductees this year into the West Coast Stock Car Hall of Fame. Back to you guys. Well, back to the 2018 West Coast Stock Car Hall of Fame, and this is an honor for me because Larry Albetti, one of our inductees, was definitely a role model for me and someone that I always look up to. And we're going to speak with his son, Lou Albetti, and just tell us what it means to have your father inducted into the Hall of Fame today.
Well, it's just wonderful. I mean, it brings back a lot of great memories of hanging around with him at the track at Sears Point, all the way back in '89 when he started there with NASCAR, and even the old dirt track races where it was at Vallejo Speedway in Petaluma, Calistoga, and just hanging out with him in the booth. It feels like he's here. It just does, yeah.
Well, see, a lot of people, they hear Stock Car Hall of Fame, and they think NASCAR at the highest echelons of racing. But what we're finding is almost all the inductees have some kind of fabric that connects them to weekly racing and weekly tracks. And Larry was the same way, announcing at a lot of weekly tracks, right?
Yes, at Petaluma, what he would do is he'd get down into the pits, and he would really interact with a lot of the drivers back then. In fact, they'd go out and have picnics and stuff like that even before the race. So I think he had almost more fun, doing the little dirt tracks and interacting with them. So definitely grassroots type of guy,
Yeah, and I can remember growing up going to Sonoma, Sears Point, and of course they play the announcing over the FM signal. And if you're going over the bridge on 37, you can start to pick that up. And we always thought we were the early risers because we were big-time stock car fans. So we try to get there by 7:30, 8 o'clock Friday morning and be there the whole weekend. And I'll be darned if Larry was already on the microphone, excited, good morning, welcome to Sonoma Raceway, before we were even in the gate. And it was always something for me where hearing that voice helped get us really excited. And I'm sure it was even for you as his son, whenever you got to hear him announce, was probably very exciting for you.
Yeah, in fact, when he retired finally about 4 or 5 years ago from announcing, a lot of his friends said how much they missed that voice over the PA system. And it was just comforting to him to hear that. So kind of the same feeling, yeah.
So how about this event? We're hearing close to 400 people here today. What does it mean to have that many people behind people like your father?
Well, I know that he would love it, hearing, from all these people. But to me, it's just amazing, the turnout. A lot of these people I haven't seen in 30 years, so it's just a great group of personality.
I'd be remiss not to mention, who do you have on your left here? My mom. Oh, okay. So what's your name?
Elaine Albetti.
Okay. So Elaine, tell us what this means to have Larry inducted in the Hall of Fame. Just tell us what this means to you.
Well, it's such an honor to him. I really appreciate and love this party, what they're doing to him. And if he could be here, he certainly would love it, every minute of it. I mean, he's always loved racing and
well, what people don't realize is it's kind of like with the drivers, us announcers, we get to the track really early. We're at the racetrack all the time. And the families of the announcers and the racetrack staff, you guys make sacrifices just like the drivers' families do. So it must be a great honor to see all that hard work appreciated. So this is pretty cool, guys. This is a pretty awesome interview, and one that means a lot to me, and I know it means a lot to you guys. So we want to thank you guys for being here and thank Larry for his contributions, and we'll throw it back to you guys. Welcome back to the 2018 West Coast Stock Car Hall of Fame. And we've caught up with someone pretty important, Brian Sperber here, president of ISM Raceway. I got that right.
That is correct, yes. For many years, of course, we were known as Phoenix International Raceway, and this year we have a great partnership with a company called ISM Connect, and we've changed the name of the racetrack to ISM Raceway.
So I'm wondering, with all that you guys have going on at Phoenix, how on earth did you have the time to be here today?
Well, this is such an important event, and of course, as you know, I'm being honored tonight as an inductee, and I wouldn't miss it for the world. It means so much to me personally, and really this is a representation of my staff and my team and everybody that's helped me along the way, and just really humbled and honored to be here tonight.
I think that's something important to note, is that most of the inductees, of course, their racing career is already wound down, and retirement's probably not the right word for some of these guys because they stay busy. But in your case, you're still the active president at ISM Raceway. You have a lot of big initiatives that you're working on right now. So how motivating is that and gratifying to get this induction when you still have a lot more work you want to do, too?
Sure. Well, you know, it depends on the different inductees. Some are still active, like Joe Garoni's still Furniture Row and others over the years. But you're right. I mean, I think to be bestowed with a Hall of Fame induction like this really make sure that we're keeping our pedal to the metal, so to speak, and that we're keeping our standards high.
So November, that's going to be a big month for you guys when you guys kind of open up all the renovations you're doing. How much are you looking forward to that?
Well, you know, we're in the final turns of the $178 million, I call it a transformation of ISM Raceway. And in November at the Can-Am 500, we'll be able to have our grand opening and show the fans and our sponsors and media what we've been working on for really the last 2 years. And I think fans are really going to be blown away because the infield and what we're creating there is so unique and so special, where fans for the first time will have access into the Monster Energy Cup garage. They'll be able to see the teams working on the cars, talk to them, take selfies, and Gatorade Victory Lane will be open to the fans as well. And that's something that is really near and dear to my heart. I've always wanted to do that for many, many years, and it always bothered me that Victory Lane was a moment where we're celebrating the accomplishment of one of our heroes, and yet the fans can't come in and join us. And so starting in November, that will not be the case at ISM Raceway. So whether it's the Truck Series, Xfinity, or Cup, race fans will be able to come into the Victory Lane and celebrate. And of course, we're going to have several bars and restaurants and lots of awesome video boards and a really just incredible entertainment zone for the fans. And I think they're really going to enjoy it.
So when you talk to a lot of the inductees, and not only this year, but in the past as well, Phoenix is always one of the tracks that comes up as where a lot of their best racing memories are. And so what does that mean to you as the president of the Speedway to hear how important that racetrack has been in the past when you look forward to what you're trying to do down the road?
Well, it's really gratifying and humbling to hear drivers talk about our racetrack in those terms, that they love it. It's someplace that's very special to them. But it also underscores how important it is that we get this project right, and that we're really doing it for the fans and for the drivers and for the teams and really everyone that's ever come to our racetrack and has special memories at our facility. We want them, when they come back, to see what we've done as an improvement and not a departure from those great memories.
Well, Brian Sperber is another example of a guy that's very busy, and we're glad he had some time for us. And if they accomplish all the things they're trying to do at Phoenix, we might have to just induct you into the Hall of Fame again. So we appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. Thanks for being here, guys.
Hey, Brian Sperber, president of ISM Raceway. Back to you guys.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the 2018 West Coast Stock Car Hall of Fame Induction Dinner. I'm your host, Ralph Sheheen. It is so great to come home to Northern California every year for this event and to see so many great friends and fellow racing community members from out here on the West Coast. We're really glad to have you all here with us tonight. As you can see, for those of you that have been with us in years past, our room here at the Meritage has grown and expanded once again. That's a great indication of how this has become one of the must-attend events for the racing community out here on the West Coast. Once again tonight, we will celebrate the rich history of stock car racing here on the West Coast as we induct another stellar class into this prestigious West Coast Stock Car Racing Hall of Fame. As we begin tonight's event, the first thing I'd like to do is quickly welcome up to the stage the chairman of the West Coast Stock Car Hall of Fame, Mr. Ken Clapp.
Good evening. Can everybody hear? Way back in the corners, we okay? Thank you. It's good to have everybody here. A lot of people I didn't have a chance to even say hello to yet. Thank you for being here, honorees and friends alike. I thank everybody in this room for their ongoing support over the years. I can't even believe when I walked in here today and I saw the room all set up and I looked back 15, 16 years ago, we started, I just shook my head. It was a great feeling, I have to tell you all. And we wouldn't be here without you. We're here tonight to honor special people that went a yard beyond and a yard above the norm. And it's a great pleasure. I want to brag a little bit. We have mailed in excess of $90,000 of checks to charities before we ever got here for the dinner tonight. And if it were not for generous contributors, that would not happen. Lots of children, animals, military have allowed us to do approximately $400,000 in less than 4 years. Thank you to all of you, and especially those that made this possible. Several years ago, I had the pleasure of meeting Curtis Francois, the owner of Gateway Raceway near St. Louis. Among many accomplishments in life, Curtis and his wonderful wife, Amy, are our proud title sponsor once again of tonight's gala and induction dinner. Please stand, Curtis and Amy, and be acknowledged. I'd like to point out that after several years of trial and tribulation, we finally have a K&N West-East championship race on the 1.25 miles at St. Louis in August. And it's going to be the start of something way better than really good, because it's going to lead to other bigger events and better things, K&N West and East Series both. Without our board of directors, we would not have grown to the success that we have. And I would like to introduce them and have them stand as announced. Please hold your applause until all have been acknowledged. Our Master of Ceremonies and a board member, of course, Ralph Sheheen. Our president and an honoree tonight, Brian Sperber. Dave Allen, president of Auto Club Speedway. Don Arnellis Jr., Esquire, part of the Agajanian law firm and our attorney. John Bickford, who doesn't need any explanations whatsoever. Mel Blyer, who's in Northern California here, my right-hand arm, helps me far beyond belief. And Ralph, the book is coming along, thanks to Mel. Dennis Maddish, longtime photographer and journalist, best known as an author, and he just finished a brand new book on racing in the San Francisco Bay Area. Owen Kearns Jr., Steve Page, former honoree, president of Sears Point. Pardon me. That tells you how old I am. President of Sonoma Raceway. Sorry, guys. Frank Gullum, Steve's right-hand man. Ed Justice Jr., very active board member, very helpful, understands what this business is all about. Appreciate not only his friendship, enjoy our long, nostalgic, historic phone conversations when we have time. Bill McAnally, the winningest car owner all time in the history of racing and stock car racing on the West Coast. Larry Renda, member of the International Speedway Corporation Board of Directors, a very close friend. And I'd like to introduce her fiance, Dr. Tom Hazelhurst. They're getting married in December. I hope that was all right to announce that. This might be the biggest crowd this has been announced in yet. I don't know. Not with us this evening, unfortunately, Wayne Wells. His wife is ill, and Wayne's not doing all that great either. My old buddy, longtime friend, Richard Spencer. Tony LaRussa, another old friend we figured out today, close to 60 years. Kenny Takeuchi. And another old friend and a guy I really have a great deal of respect for, and he's an honoree this evening, Dick Woodland. In addition, I have received above and beyond support for countless hours from Jennifer Wenzel and Christy Leader from ISM Raceway in Arizona, Mel Blyer, Owen Kearns, and Richard Spencer. And ladies and gentlemen, I could not make it happen without you, period. In addition to the cooperation and sometimes tolerance that we receive from the Meritage banquet manager, Elise Pack, and the friendship I have enjoyed can't be matched. Thank you, Elise. If I've left anybody out, I apologize. I might have. There are several other very key people in the motorsports industry that I appreciate the presence of and the friendship over the years. Walt Zarnicki, Vice Chairman of the Penske Racing Organization. Jim Williams, longtime friend and the builder of Irwindale Speedway. Virgie Baird, Rusty Reese, and Larry Collins from Kern County Raceway. Tim Huddleston, the new promoter of Irwindale Raceway, and his primary sponsors, again, Ed Justice Jr. and Bob Bruncotti. I don't know if Bob's with us tonight. Bob owns Sunrise Ford stores down in Southern California. He's a premier car owner for many years in the West. He's generated lots of wins and championships. Stu Grant and his wife Pat, Goodyear Racing Tires. Stu heads up their worldwide racing program. Jane Hart, owner of New Smyrna Speedway in Florida. Doug Hobbs, Evergreen Speedway, Monroe, Washington. I just suggested to him tonight we need to talk about reviving the Washington 500. Kevin Camper, Las Vegas Motor Speedway. John Lashley, Tucson Speedway. Tony Nocetti, Stockton 99 Speedway. Kenny and Tammy Shepard, Madera Speedway. And near last, but far from least, not here this evening, but Michael Gaughan, who makes so much happen in motor racing, it is hard to identify all of his contributions. I'm very pleased to see old friend George Fulmer, my book, one of the greats. The First Lady in racing for over 50 years, Miss Linda Vaughn. Linda, nice to have you here. About 4 years ago, I kind of invited myself to have lunch with some gentlemen over in Danville, and they were all, for the most part, SCCA enthusiasts, former competitors, owners, sponsors, kind of worldwide, really. I call them the Bridges Group. We have a lot of fun. It's good to have y'all here tonight. I hope you enjoy going around in circles more than left and right. However, we're going left and right with real quality this weekend. David Wilson called me the other day, and I don't know if he's here or not. I haven't seen him. David is the president of Toyota Racing Development, and good to have him with us. I believe he's here. In closing, I'd like to recognize the past inductees or a family member who is present tonight. Please stand, hold your applause until all have been recognized. I'm going to go through this fairly rapidly. Alan Beebe, John Bickford, Rick Carelli, Ray Claridge, Larry Collins representing his father Marion, Mike Duncan, Joe Fernandez, Jeff Jefferson, representing his dad, George Jefferson. Ed Justice Jr., representing his dad, his uncles, and himself. Excuse me. Steve McCord, representing Galpin Ford, one of the great car owners of all time in the West. He's the guy that owned the cars that Ron Hornaday Sr., Eddie Gray, Don Knoll, the list goes on. Pretty impressive. They were a huge force back in the 50s and 60s. Vic Curtin, represented by his son Todd. Owen Kearns. Alan Mangini, representing his dad Lou and his uncle Joe Jr. Steve Page. Pardon me. Bill McAnally, Bill Sedgwick, Kenny Takeuchi, Jim Williams. Congratulations, one and all. Thank you. I have intentionally left out one person who's a good friend to many of us, one of my closest friends for over 60 years, Herschel McGriff. I want to share a fun story with you real quick, and then I'm going to turn it back over to Ralph. About a year ago, I got a phone call one day from Herschel. He said, I want you to go motorcycle riding with me. I said, I don't have a motorcycle. He said, no. He said, I want you to go on the Kyle Petty charity ride. I said, I don't have a motorcycle. He said, no, I got a three-wheel Honda Goldwing, and you're going to ride on the back of mine. I said, I've never ridden on a motorcycle. He said, it's all right. So early this year, went down to Tucson, Arizona, and we went with John Lashley and another friend and Herschel Jr., and we rode all over everywhere. It was kind of fun. Saw the cows and the horses and the mountains and the streams, and I was comfortable. So I decided I was going to do it. I went down there early in the year, and Herschel, at the age of 90, drove his last race. We left after the race that night, flew directly to the East Coast, joined up with the Petty ride. And I got to tell you, it was a great experience, a wonderful experience for a wonderful cause. Herschel almost got into the NASCAR National Hall of Fame this year. I'm speaking out of turn a little bit, but I'm not sharing any numbers, but he came awful close. None of that means anything because he's the only friend I've got that's married to a beautiful lady younger than his oldest granddaughter. And I think it's fair to say there's nobody in this room that ever dated Marilyn Monroe other than Herschel McGriff. And I suspect that. Anyway, we had a wonderful, it was like a family reunion. I'd like Herschel to come up here for a minute because we're going to give the Kyle Petty Victory Junction Gang Camp a nice donation, and I want him to accept it. This is going to go over to Kyle and Morgan immediately. Would you like to say a word or two? Would you like to say anything?
Sure.
What do you want to say?
Give me the mic.
You got it.
I want you to know, if everybody can hear this year, you can blame it on to me because I beefed so much about last year. All the inductees, I never heard a thing because I was sitting in the back and the loudspeaker. You're doing great tonight. He's talking in the mic, and I'm probably the only one that can tell him his faults, but sometimes when he talks, he would fade off. Tonight, you're not doing that. So even as old as you are, you learn stuff, you know. So anyway, he's donating from the West Coast Soccer Hall of Fame $5,000 to the Kyle Petty charity run. And so he told me that he's going to give me the check, but he says, give it back to me and I'll mail it. He didn't trust me to mail it like that. So anyway, you know, when Kenny started out, I told him what I wanted to do with him, but I said, you have to make a test. And so he came down. He told you a little bit of this, and so 4 or 5 of us went out. I wasn't sure he'd fit on the bike, for one thing. And I wasn't sure he could get on it, you know, because he hasn't done this stuff. But I tell you what, he did really good. He climbed on that thing just like at home. And that thing, besides everybody tells me, it rides like a couch. It's sitting on a couch. So we had a great time. There was 150 riders or bikes and about 200 and some people. And so, of course, he knew a lot of them when we got back there. And quite a few NASCAR people are involved in the thing. And so it's a great charity thing for the kids and that camp that's there. And so Kyle has done a great job promoting it. So anybody that wants to do anything, I'll take more checks. Thank you.
Thank you, Herschel. He got on me so bad the other day about not speaking up. If I'm too loud, I'm sorry. Anyway, combination of 180 years of age riding down the highways of America together. Everybody ought to do it once. It was a terrific experience. Thank you very much. I kind of went over time a little bit, but it's just great to have you all here. And again, thank you. Ralph, you're the boss.
All I can say after those two is, ladies and gentlemen, we have lost the racetrack. All right? Those two are something else. So, you know, after hearing about that, one little note I wanted to pass along. You know, the big thing these days is they're kind of redoing all these movies. Like I just saw the other day, A Star is Born is coming back out. I don't know if you heard about that. Well, things went so well with Herschel and Ken that the word on the street now is that Easy Rider is on the way back out. Herschel, of course, will be Peter Fonda. Ken will be Jack Nicholson. And if they can't find anybody else, I'll play the role of Dennis Hopper. How about that with those guys? Something else, right? I could listen to them all night. Of course, the way they were going, it might take all night. We have a new thing we're starting this year that we're really excited about, and we're going to begin it right here. We have our new Heritage class of inductees. We're pretty excited about this, and we're going to introduce and induct the first members of our Heritage class right now. Beginning with the great Freddie Agabashian. He began racing stock cars in 1934 in San Jose, California. A Modesto, California-born driver, won 500-mile stock car races at the Oakland, California Mile, as well as events at Southern Ascot in the Los Angeles area. He last raced in a USAC event at West Coast Speedway, which is right over in Vallejo, California, driving a Dodge D500 for West Coast Stock Car Hall of Famer Jim Dane. Freddie was a veteran of 11 Indianapolis 500s from 1947 through 1957, winning the pole for the 1952 race in the famed Cummins Diesel Special. His best finish was 4th, which he recorded in 1953. To accept in honor of Freddie Agabashian, please welcome Mr. Tom Motter.
I'm sure the family of Freddie Agabashian thanks you. Freddie Jr. lives in the Texas area. His daughter Joanne lives in Alamo and couldn't make it tonight. I humbly and thankfully accept this for the family. Freddie was a hero. He was a giant of a man, a giant of a race car driver, and a friend of everyone in racing. I'm sure the entire Agabashian family thanks you. Good night.
Please welcome to the stage to induct our next person into our heritage class from Penske Racing, Mr. Walt Zarnicki. You want me to go ahead and do the introduction? All right, I can do that. We can. Listen, I faked my way through many things. I can do this one too. George Vignati is our next inductee into our heritage class. The San Francisco native raced stock cars prior to World War II and owned an Oldsmobile, campaigned in NASCAR's Premier Series and K&N Pro Series West events in 1954. George was a top midget owner in post-war Northern California, his cars winning 4 Bay City Racing Association titles, and of course, he is credited with creating the first Indianapolis Roadster. As a chief mechanic, he won a record 7 Indy 500s with A.J. Foyt, Al Unser, Sr., Graham Hill, Gordon Johncock, and Tom Sneva. Vignati's cars won multiple Indianapolis-type championships and 85 races.
Thank you, Ralph. It is a real honor for me to accept on behalf of George Vignati and his family. Going back to our heritage in Indianapolis, we had the opportunity to race against George. It seemingly he always beat us. So I think that was testimony to what he's done. As Ralph just indicated and articulated, the fact that George is really one of the all-time champions of Indianapolis. There's a story that some of you may have heard. I was thinking about it while Ralph was speaking. You may know that Roger Penske had the opportunity to drive at the Indianapolis 500 for George Vignati. And Roger at the time decided that he was going to pursue his business career and not take the driver's test. And the driver's test went to a fellow named Mario Andretti. So things worked out. So again, it's my honor to accept this award on behalf of George Vignati and his family. Thank you very much.
Our next inductee is Bill Cheeseburger. Born in 1927, he began his racing career at the age of 11 at the wheel of a soapbox derby entry that shed its garden hose fabricated tires just a few feet after it was pushed off. He won the 1955 Arizona Jalopy Association Championship, driving a 1932 Ford nicknamed Babalu. Bill once won 73 of the 75 races he entered. He made 6 Indianapolis 500 starts with a best finish of 10th in 1958 and continues to hold the record for the most cars passed on the race's opening lap at 17. He competed in 2 NASCAR Premier Series events and 7 NASCAR K&N Pro Series West races, winning at Manzanita Speedway. Accepting for Bill Cheeseburg, please welcome Trevor Hidalgo. To introduce our next inductee into our Heritage class, please welcome
really bad, as a matter of fact. And off-road racing, land speed racing, sports cars, and like one of our other Hall of Fame members, Herschel McGriff, even the Carrera Panamericana, of course, in a stock car. I think Herschel might be one of a handful of survivors of the Carrera Panamericana that ran from 50 to 54. That's amazing to think about it. On the issue of stock cars, you might remember when Mickey and fellow driver Danny Ongais ran stock Ford Mustangs at Bonneville and set several speed records. This feat was covered by Hot Rod magazine, both on the cover and inside. I'm told Mickey showed his mechanical interest as a very young man when he dismantled his mom's washing machine. I don't think that's necessarily a proud moment in the family history, but it was a beginning. You know, we need more Mickey Thompsons in racing today, and we also need the freedom in racing to let Mickey Thompsons shine. It was that freedom years back that allowed Mickey to design and build the first slingshot drag racer. You may not know this, but Mickey was very instrumental in the development of the wide tire at Indianapolis. In 1962, he gave Dan Gurney his rookie ride for the Indy 500, a car that was known as the Harvey Aluminum Special and would appear on the cover of Hot Rod magazine. My personal favorite, as a matter of fact. I loved that car. Mickey set records at Bonneville on such a regular basis that at one time he held nearly 200 of them. His 4-engine Challenger achieved land speed history when it went over 400 miles per hour in 1960. Making Mickey the first to exceed 400 miles per hour as an American. He designed a revolutionary Mustang Mach 1 funny car and dominated the class in 1969. I remember that car well. At the time, I was covering drag racing as a young photographer and had taken many pictures of that car in Victory Lane. It was the car, actually one of 2 cars that he ran. Mickey was the first to promote and stage off-road races in a stadium venue, a move that exposed the sport to thousands of new fans, brought the desert of Baja into the stadium. You notice a trend here? Mickey comes up with some sort of a wild and revolutionary idea, implements it, and then it ends up on the cover of some magazine, many times Hot Rod. All of this came from a man who early in his career worked the graveyard shift in the press room at the LA Times, while managing Lions drag strip on the weekends. Ladies and gentlemen, Mickey Thompson, a 2018 inductee into the West Coast Stock Car Hall of Fame, and to accept his award, I'm honored to say his son Danny Thompson's here.
Kind words, Ed. My dad did do, well, to me, of course, I'm very, very biased toward it, but he did a lot of amazing things, and so many of them Ed just covered. But it's an honor to accept this on behalf of the family. And I mean, there's a lot of people here that knew him and knew what he did, and the things, so many different things. It was one of those guys that never slept at night and come up with a big list. After 58 years. So the guy was pretty amazing. So I thank you all so much. Thank you, Ralph, and the West Coast NASCAR Hall of Fame. I mean, great night. Thank you.
To induct our next member into the heritage portion of the West Coast Stock Car Hall of Fame, please welcome from Madera Speedway, Mr. Kenny Shepard.
No, sir, I ain't been drinking. I ain't even had one.
Good evening. 33 years ago, I was working at a steel yard trying to figure out how to stay in a race car. It was back in the mid-'80s. And I took another job with a gentleman that owned a company that distributed Coca-Cola. His name was Clyde Prickett. And I did that just simply so I could stay in racing or try and further my career. What I didn't realize was that I would learn. I started out driving a truck for Clyde, worked my way up to facility manager, and learned a lot about managing people and a lot about business. Clyde trained me in ways I don't think he understands what he did. He set me on a path to be where I'm at today. The Madera Speedway, for example, I run it. Clyde helped design it. Our paths have crossed many ways, but he helped design the buildings and the concessions way back in the late 60s, going into 1971 when it opened. So it's very special for me to be up here for Clyde. Clyde Prickett was born in 1932. What a year to be born for a car guy, huh? I thought maybe 1957 or 65 would be the only ones comparable. He began his racing career in 1949 at age 16. The promoter found out in 1953 that he was underage. You had to be 21 years old in those days to race, but the promoter let him continue anyway. Clyde won the NASCAR State Modified Championship in 1955 at age 22. He had a 2-year-old at home and another on the way. He was also going through plumber's apprenticeship and driving 5 nights a week. Talk about an era of real racing. We have a hard time keeping him running right now, Clyde, once a month, so pretty special there. He drove a Jimmy 6 for Billy Blagg and his dad. When that car broke, Clyde ran his Mercury Flathead. They were leading the NASCAR national points late in the season to eventually finish second in the national points that year. He quit driving at age 30 in 1963 because he thought he was too old. He built a car for the new guy named George Snyder. He then introduced Snyder to a gentleman named Fred Gearhart. They went off to the Midwest racing dirt cars, so Clyde built a new car for Marshall Sargent. Clyde owned cars for Snyder and Sargent. At one point, Clyde Prickett won 17 races in a row with Marshall Sargent. After Clyde and Marshall split up, Clyde decided he might not be too old to race after all. So Scotty Kane gave him a car, but it was a stock car, which led to being here to find out what stock cars were all about. Clyde Prickett ran Grand National West from 1965 to 1969, and this is something that probably the most special line of what I researched and wrote, the most special line to me. He actually fed his family from his race earnings from the mid-1965 season to the end of 1966. He also made a profit racing in 67. He also had quite a reputation for not tearing cars up, being very clean, and making money even in the modifieds. So I thought that was very special. 1968, he won in Medford, Oregon. Clyde ran, first time Clyde went to Riverside, I wasn't going to mention this, but I will. There's a really neat picture that Clyde's son, Russ, sent me, and it was really unique when I got it. It says Junior Johnson on the back, it says Ford, and it looks like number 26, and it's an old fire suit. So I thought, what in the heck could that possibly be? Well, Russ explained it to me that Clyde's first trip to Riverside, NASCAR put a new rule in place. They had to wear fire suits. Clyde didn't have a fire suit. So Junior Johnson was nice enough to give him a fire suit, and he still has it today, hung in the closet. Boy, would I like to have that fire suit. Probably half the people in this room, huh? Clyde hung up his helmet in 1972, but it didn't end there. 1983, Clyde formed with a friend a race team named Star Racing, second time around. They built a car this time for George Snyder to stay sharp in. It was a super modified, if you guys have seen those. Kind of like the Oswego Supers that Ralph announces, and the West Coast Supers, the big engines hung off the side. They became a power team and a thriving super modified scene out here in California on the West Coast with Wally Pancras and George Snyder, among others that drove for Clyde. This next part, I really had a hard time. I was going to take this out. We've got our Madera Speedway. We do something pretty innovative, and we've got our point leader and second place in our 5150 Junior Late Model Series, which is 10 to 16-year-olds on MAV TV and full-size stock cars, plus our Pro Series drivers are here. And I coach them on marketing and how to, sell themselves. But this part I was going to leave out, so if I don't want to hear it next week in our big race if you guys get in trouble. Clyde was always known as a gentleman in a big way. He was absolutely, and I've known him forever, and the one thing about Clyde, he'd rarely get upset, but when he was upset, you would know it. Even at Prickett's Distributing, it was rare. But there was one time back at Kearney Bowl, and he got mad at starter Mel Fernandez, and I've got to put my glasses on for this because this newspaper article is tiny. It's a lot of research happened to get this. The headline reads, Pombo Triumphs. Right under it, it reads, Prickett touches off Kearney Bowl melee. Hutton is injured. And I'll just read you the first paragraph real quick. It says, Clyde Prickett nearly ignited a major riot, left Herman Hutton with a battered rib cage, and knocked out of action in Kearney Bowl. All he wanted to do was talk things out. Prickett, the 34-year-old, veteran who rarely loses his temper, did so last night and set off one of the wildest scenes ever witnessed at Kearney Bowl. So again, rarely, and you got to see this picture, it is something else. I got to thinking, we promote races and work really hard. Half of the grandstands is down here in this picture. Half of the pits, and they're on the front straightaway. Clyde ended up stopping and had a chat with Mel Fernandez, and it ended up being quite the riot. So no wonder we can't sell tickets these days. There's no way in the world we could have a heavyweight fight and a race and get away with that. But anyway, I just thought it was kind of a cute story. That's probably the one time that Clyde ever got mad at a racetrack. Clyde and his family have been involved in racing for 69 years and still counting, with his grandson David still racing and behind the wheel today. I mentioned those 4 drivers that I brought here. They were doing some interviews and trying to help with the Hall of Fame ourselves to put it on MAV TV. And those 4 drivers were able to meet Clyde. And I'm going to add something here that I really hope that a little bit of Clyde Prickett rubs off on those 4 drivers that I brought here. They're all youngsters. Our sport needs this hardworking, just this ethic. And I always talk about where our sport, we've came from a car culture and morphed into a computer culture. And so many of us that love the sport, we're working so hard to preserve this. And I really hope to you guys at our table that a little bit of Clyde rubs off in that conversation you guys had with him. Clyde earned his place here tonight. In my eyes, that Grand National run from 65 to 69, certainly that 55 championship and the NASCAR Modified. On behalf of the Prickett family, the entire racing community, it's my privilege and my honor to welcome Clyde Prickett to the stage to be inducted into the West Coast Stock Car Hall of Fame.
We have a special media award here tonight as part of our heritage class. Please welcome to the stage West Coast Stock Car Hall of Fame board member, Mr. John Bickford.
Thanks, Ralph. Congratulations to all of tonight's inductees. It's a real honor to talk with all of them. And a great friend of mine, Lou Albetti, invited me to come up here and talk a little bit about his dad. Larry and I met in 1966. We became friends at our absolute first conversation. I think most people who ever met Larry probably became great friends with him. A sprint car racer from San Francisco, a sports car driver, an instructor, an automobile dealership principal, and a race announcer. Not sure about that, but I asked him if he considered himself to be an accomplished pilot, and those of you who know Larry would probably know his answer. I accomplished the last landing. So for me, I said, okay, let's go. And I stand here tonight because we made it. Larry came on the racing scene in the early 50s. Safety was an afterthought, if it was a thought at all in those days. Having almost no money translated into a modest at best race car, Larry learned quickly the dangers of racing, and I believe this is part of why Larry was so vocal about all forms of safety. As time progressed, Larry dabbled in many forms of racing, educating himself on asphalt and ovals, moving on to road courses, and landing a role as a scrutineer for SCCA amateur competitors licensing. It's impossible to share all of Larry's driving involved himself in. What I can say is he had a love for cars, whether it was driving them, talking about them, or selling them. Larry was a car guy. After many years of competitive SCCA racing, as well as other forms, Larry settled into the announcer's booth. He'd been invited to the booth on several occasions over the years. It didn't take Larry long to figure out that this was where he wanted to be in his second stage of his racing career. Talking was something that Larry did well. If you knew Larry, hearing his baritone voice was never a problem. Getting a word in, another story. Yeah. I believe most of the memories I have of Larry are not just as a friend, but a guy dedicated to improving motorsports. Larry had a strong business sense. He knew that promoters were always at risk, and the people in the grandstands were the difference between making it or breaking it at the bank. As business owners, neighbors. Our buildings were separated only by an alley. We had many evenings where we solved the world's problems. For the two of us, that meant discussing race cars, tracks, competitors, and of course, our kids and their cars. Larry believed as an announcer he needed to connect the spectators and drivers hidden behind helmets inside a stock car, below those wings put on top of beautiful race cars. Talking about every driver, every local sponsor, the points, where all the drivers were trending, and what the spectators could look forward to as the night's program. This was Larry's forte. If he couldn't spot a rivalry, he made one up. If the storyline for the night's racing was weak, embellish it, a little or a lot in many cases. There's nothing like two competitors mad at each other and not knowing why until Larry explained that put people in the grandstands. Larry turned a bunch of noisy cars into an orchestra with the drivers as musicians, and each of them with a unique sound of their own. Many of today's heroes first spoke about Larry. Nicknames given by Larry have endured time, no matter how hard the drivers tried to shake them. I always envied Larry, a guy experienced in racing during a unique period. He shook the hands of Bruce McLaren, Denny Holm, David Hobbs, A.J. Foyt, Dan Gurney, Morio, the Unzers, the Allisons, Richard Petty, Tony Stewart, and Jeff Gordon, just to mention a few. He raced with many of them. He shook their hand and talked about them. He's a great, great friend. There are hundreds of stories online about all of the inductees, many of them researched and written by our own Owen Kearns, a board member of the West Coast Stock Car Hall of Fame. I encourage all of you tonight to go online, search out the inductees, and enjoy the reading. I'd now like to introduce Lou Albetti, a friend and the son of my old pal Larry.
Get my notes out. Pay will be better than anywhere you would have finished. And this is the part I like. And I think your fellow competitors would be a lot safer with you up in the booth. Now, in all fairness to Dad, I think he had all of $400 in his race car. So I'd like to think that it was more of an equipment problem than a driver problem. Well, that started that, and he did enjoy the spotlight. But it was bigger than that. He would spend a lot of time gathering notes, recording information from the drivers and pit crew, and just getting enough to make a story unfold through the race. He took a lot of pride in getting the details right, and getting right was never more important than when Steve Earle asked him to announce the Monterey Historics. Those drivers are just fanatical about the history on their cars. And it gave him a chance to interview some of the best in the business. Henry Ford II, Carroll Shelby, Arcus Duntov, the father of the Corvette. But he did his homework, and it was always an intelligent interview. That relationship lasted 40 years, and so did Sears Point, where he started in 1968 and did everything from Indy cars to NASCAR. But short tracks like Petaluma, Vallejo Speedway, I think he enjoyed that just as much, if not more. I do have a racing flying story that kind of chimes into what John was talking about. He was managing a track at Vaca Valley Raceway. There was actually a track there in Vacaville. And the promoter fell short on his payment, bounced a check, whatever. And my dad and me, we get into his plane and we fly over the track while the race is going on. And he's waiting for a break in the action. And when that happens, he kind of just buzzes the track like a warning shot. And he lands his plane right on the straightaway. And then he pops out and he hands me the keys. Why, I don't know. At that point, I'm just a 10-year-old kid at this point, you know. And so he exchanges words with the promoter, probably a lot of words. And he gets the money somehow and jumps back in the plane, throttles it up, and off we go down the straightaway. And life was never boring with Dad. I mean, it was great riding his coattails. He was like that in business, at the dealership, just whatever it took to get it done. Our last story, it's kind of how he gave me the racing bug. But one day we're out testing a full race Jaguar XKE, one of these single-seater jobs. And it's on the back roads and hills of Napa right here. So he lets me sit in the aluminum pan, you know, right next to him, you know, pre-airbag stuff. And you know, while he's flying around the turns and bouncing around, I'm just bouncing around. I'm skidding around the bottom of this, and I was hooked at that point. I wanted to become a race car driver, and that's what Dad did. He just through the PA system, he just got people hooked on racing, and you know, wanted them to come back for the next race, and that's what he did well. So that was my dad, and I got to say thank you, Mom. I love you. Yeah. Thank you. What did I do? Okay. Yeah.
Your ring.
Like I said, he had the talent.
You know, when I was a college kid up at Chico in the 80s, dreaming of being a race announcer, went down to Sears Point. Sorry, Steve, that's what it was called back then, as you know, and Laguna Seca. Wanting to get on the PA, and a very nice gentleman by the name of Larry Albetti was very worthy and welcoming of allowing me to jump on and share the microphone with him and Dick Sisich and some of the others, and was a great mentor, a great talent on the microphone, and a great friend. So, Lou, to you and your family, congratulations, a very worthy member of our West Coast Stock Car Hall of Fame. You know, as you all know, the racing community is an industry. It's also a family. And we were talking about some of our family members here that we've inducted into our heritage class earlier tonight as we just wrapped up here with Larry Albetti. And we were talking about George Vignati. And that family member we lost in 2013 at the age of 97. Another tremendous stat to the legendary career of George Vignati. And fortunately for us at the West Coast Stock Car Hall of Fame, we have Mr. Ken Clapp, who knows so many of the family members and how we can go about finding them. And we're very fortunate tonight that we have with us a member of George Vignati's family. Ken Vignati is here with us tonight. So before we move on from our heritage class, please welcome to the stage as we welcome Ken Vignati.
Oh boy, wow. I thought all the votes were in and all the accounts, but anyway, is this the Academy Awards all over again? Man, this is really a privilege and an honor to accept. I think I'm accepting this award on behalf of my Uncle George. Grew up listening to the Indy 500 on the radio. My father, who was very instrumental in his racing career, was in the pit crew, running the fuel hose and things of that nature. But it's so exciting to know that you're locked into this little radio and things of that nature. Actually saw a Freddie Agabation race, and it was it was quite a heritage, and it was quite a legacy growing up with that. And I'm sure my dad and Uncle George are looking down right now, and I really appreciate Ralph and company affording me this opportunity to talk on behalf of my uncle and my dad. Thank you very much. Once again, it's an incredible privilege and honor to be associated with the Vignati family. Thank you very much.
Okay, time now to move on to the rest of our 2018 class for the West Coast Stock Car Hall of Fame. We're going to begin by introducing our next presenter, who happens to be a colleague of mine at Fox. Please welcome from NASCAR on Fox, Daytona 500 winner, Michael Waltrip.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Linda. Nice to see you. You look as lovely as ever for 100 years. No, wait, that's wrong. For 30 years, I've always appreciated you, so glad you're here. I started off on a bad note. Plus, I'm dressed like a cucumber. Can you believe this? Like, I didn't mean to show up looking like this, but I will tell you that I love coming to the West Coast, and I totally appreciate and respect all the players that have made NASCAR and stock car racing what it is today that are part of the West Coast. I mean, I got to get my picture made with Herschel McGriff again tonight, and what an honor that was for me. And to see some of the inductees and just to be a part of tonight's program, I just want everyone to know that it means the world to me. I respect you so much, and I appreciate this part of our culture and what it means to NASCAR immensely. So thank you. I want to tell you that I'm here tonight to not only induct a very worthy colleague into the Stock Car Hall of Fame on the West Coast, but also my friend, Brian Sperber. And Brian and I, we started out, I think, as brothers. He was born to a racing family in Florida, and I was born to a racing family in Kentucky. And we're so much alike. I mean, we're both really tall. We both have amazing flowing locks of hair. We both have abs that we put keels on, you know, and we're into the beach life, and we're funny. We're just great guys. We're both really humble too, and I think that That's what makes us so much alike. And when we started out in life, think about this. I just wanted to race a car, and he just wanted to run the business of NASCAR. So he graduated from Florida State University, and he begged and pleaded for a job at Daytona Racetrack, ISC, and his path to where he is today is just amazing. He ran Watkins Glen. He ran, he was at Auto Club Speedway, and now he's at ISM Raceway. And just so thankful for what he's been able to accomplish and who he is and what he's done. I personally think the thing I love most about Brian is the person that he is. We were able to have dinner last night and sat with his friends, Glenn, Jason, Sonny, Brian, Bati, the wives, Tammy, everybody, and just tell stories about Brian and how much he loves what he does. The thing that I love most about Brian is he envisioned 8 years ago a track in the desert that I'm so passionate about, ISM Raceway, and that it would be different than any other track. How they would make it the most interactive, the most fan-friendly, the most fun racetrack for fans to go to. That vision he had 8 years ago, I flew by there on the way here. Our plane went right by it, and that's out of the ground. It's happened. It's going to be so cool to go there in February. And his friend Glenn, he's going to put a margarita bar in the infield. Now, I just got to tell y'all that there ain't many margarita bars in the infield of NASCAR tracks. And I think that's what we have to look at as we move forward, how we make racing more fun, how we make it more cool, and how we serve people more margaritas. Wouldn't that be just the best thing in the whole world? Hi, Bill, how are you? So we grew apart, Brian and I did, on our journey. We were kindred souls. We were like brothers when we were born. I was in Kentucky. I was a racer. He was in Florida, and we grew apart. All right, hold on a second. I'm sorry, Brian. Just one minute here. Remind me of a joke. This guy was driving down the road, and he ran a red light, and his buddy was riding with him. He said, "Hey, man, what are you doing? You're going to get us killed." He said, No, don't worry about it. My brother does it all the time. And the guy said, "Well, you're crazy." So they come to another red light, right through it. Don't worry about it. It's fine. My brother does it all the time. He comes to a green light, stops, and he said, "Now what are you doing?" He said, "My brother might be coming." I just thought of that one. I got one more. This one's worse. These two guys were running through the woods, and they come around a corner, and a guy said, "I come around the corner, and all of a sudden a bear jumped out and went, roar!" And I crapped my pants, and he said, "Really, when the bear jumped out?" He said, No, just now when it went, roar! I mean, I told you that one was worse. This is not the way to enter. Gosh darn it. This is not the way to introduce a guy into the Hall of Fame. So let me back up. So I'd like to introduce now my dear friend and colleague and a man that I have so much respect for and appreciation for, Laura, Aaron. I know you're very proud of your husband and your father. And by the way, Aaron, the hair skips a generation. You're fine. You're in good shape. It's my honor to introduce into the West Coast Stock Car Hall of Fame my friend, my buddy, Mr. Brian Sperber.
Well, that might be the best introduction of all time, huh? But thank you, Michael. It means a lot to have you come here and do that introduction, even making fun of me and all that. It was great. I loved every second of it. I also want to thank all of our friends that have come in from Los Angeles, from Dallas and Arizona to be with us tonight. Thanks, guys. It means so much to us. I also want to thank the Hall of Fame board and our members, and the chairman, who I consider my adopted uncle, Uncle Ken Clapp. And Ken is not only my uncle, but is also, I'm proud to call him my friend. I also want to recognize my mom and dad, who have flown in from Florida. Carol and Perry Sperber are here. Yep, thank you. And as Michael mentioned, my son Aaron came up with us from Arizona, and my wife Laura came with me as well. And you know, we were on the plane. Yeah, absolutely. Yes. And so we were flying up, and I was talking to Laura about this, and I'm so excited to be here tonight. And I said, gosh, you know, in your wildest dreams, did you ever think I would be in the Hall of Fame? And she looked at me and she said, Brian, I love you, but you're not in my wildest dreams. That one takes a second, and then it's pretty funny. I have to tell you, though, that Laura wants me to it's a joke. It really is just a joke. My connection to motor racing started, believe it or not, when I was 11 weeks old and attended my first drag race. My father was a drag racer in that era and won many races over the years. But he wasn't the only Sperber to compete with well-known drivers. My mother had to take to task a competitor who wouldn't give us a refund on a faulty set of tires he sold us. So the legendary Big Daddy Don Garlitz tasted defeat that day and handed over that refund. Well done, Mom. But racing was in my blood from an early age, as our family owned a speed shop in Daytona Beach. I grew up around not only drag racing, but IMSA racing and, of course, NASCAR. As a teenager, I was able to accompany my family to England when British race teams were taking delivery of racing engines that were built in our family shop. It was a very cool experience for a teenager. After college, I returned to Daytona Beach, like a lot of college grads, to try to find a job. And my parents had gone to high school with Bob Johnson, who today owns the Brumos Racing Porsche team. And Bob introduced me to the great Jim Foster, who was president of Daytona International Speedway at the time. After meeting Jim, I pestered him until he finally realized that if he ever wanted me to end my endless harassment, he better just give me a job and tell me to shut up. And so he did that, and I started in the program department in 1990. From there, I had the opportunity to work for and with so many great people, including Bill France Jr. and really the entire France family. Jim Foster, Jim Hunter, John Saunders, Mike Helton, and of course my Uncle Ken. My posts included heading up sponsorship sales for ISC, president of Watkins Glen. I served as chairman of Auto Club Speedway, and have been president of Phoenix International Raceway, now known as ISM Raceway, for 16 years. And I'm really proud of so many of my accomplishments, including bringing new clients into the sport. I had a hand in changing the Daytona 500 logo, which debuted the year that Dale Sr. won that race. I had a chance to help bring a second NASCAR race to Phoenix, and soon there'll be a grand opening of the $178 million transformation of ISM Raceway. And I've been incredibly lucky to work with terrific drivers, teams, officials, other track presidents, some of whom are here tonight and are good friends of mine, and media, not to mention serving the great fans of auto racing. But I wouldn't be here or have accomplished anything if not for the amazing staff and teammates that I've been blessed to work with through the years. My ISC colleagues, especially the team I directly worked with in the 90s, the staff at Watkins Glen, who are generous and patient with an inexperienced and at time dumb 30-year-old track president. They helped me mature in so many ways, and I'll always be grateful. The great folks at Auto Club Speedway, and we only worked together for 2 years, but what a wonderful staff. And to my team at ISM Raceway, words cannot express the gratitude and appreciation I have for our staff. They're smart, dedicated, and passionate, and it's truly an honor to serve as their track president. So while I will humbly accept this induction into the West Coast Stock Car Hall of Fame, it's really a result of all the wonderful people that have touched my life. And I want to thank the Hall of Fame, and more importantly, thanks to all of them.
We talked about how Larry Albetti was a great announcer out here on the West Coast. Well, one of the gentlemen who helped blaze the trail for any of us who dreamed of holding a microphone and racing out here on the West Coast is with us here tonight, and he will do our next presentation. Please welcome to the stage a good friend, Mr. Kenny Takeuchi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sheheen. I want to congratulate all of our inductees, honorees tonight, a very historic night on a record-breaking crowd. And Dick, those on table 23 are very well behaved. Tonight I have the honor and privilege to make the introduction to our next West Coast Stock Hall of Fame inductee, Mr. Richard Dick Woodland. The Dick Woodland story is truly a classical American success story about someone who realized the American dream and made that dream become a reality. Overcoming adversity in the form of several personal and family tragedies, several major health issues, and other bumps in the road, he became successful in auto racing, business, life, and community. All the while, always remaining the humble, unassuming human being as we best know him. His 60-plus years racing career started at age 15 in the local Paso Robles area. He hooked up with Kenny Van Blargen with a Jalopy, that's a modified stock car. He tried his hand at auto racing, and in 1961 enrolled at Fresno State College. He and brother Fred had their own fraternity house called Hog Heaven. It was a detached garage in an alley in central Fresno, and here's where everybody in racing would gather. It was known as the Santa King Valley Racing Headquarters. The local police were well aware of the nights that we heard the beautiful sounds of a big, powerful Joe Bogosian open-header engine firing up. But the half of the police force were real good race fans, so there was never a problem there. The first major win for the Woodland team came in 1963 when Mark Ward drove the legendary 8-ball to a big win at the then Capitol Speedway, the 10th annual Gold Cup Race of Champions. This race was a very big one for those that came over from the Santa King Valley area, driving the cars that raced 3 or 4 nights a week on pavement and dirt. And they ran against some of the best competition on the West Coast, drivers from throughout the United States. One year the field was about 150 competitors fighting for starting spots. We had Valley drivers that are very successful with their NASCAR modifieds. Al Pomba won it 4 times, Red Mulligan won it twice, and Marshall Sargent won it 1 time. In 1965, Dick answered a call to duty and served very proudly for his country for 2 years. Following military service, he worked out a deal with Pat's family to become part of a large duck raising business known in Southern California as the Ward Duck Farms. And if you were a race fan at any place in California, you saw the decal or the painted Ward Duck special on not only stock cars but the open wheel cars. With the arrival of Robert, Jeanette, Rich Jr., and Patrick, Dick's driving days as a sprint car driver became limited, and he became a full-time car owner. Major health issues in mid-1970s and early 1980s saw Dick prove the doctors wrong once again, as he outlived the doctors' predictions many, many times, and he moved upward and onward, beating all the odds. In 1991, the Woodlands formed a Winston West team, retaining former Southwest Tour champion Ron Hornaday as their driver. In 1992, Dick and son Rich became very heavily involved in NASCAR stock car racing and traveled throughout the United States. A good finish with Rich. He, despite being a full-time college student, he finished 5th in the NASCAR West and West standings. And also another outstanding win was the Can-Am Pro Series West win at then Phoenix International Raceways in 1998. For a period of 10 years, the Woodlands were very competitive, running with ARCA and the NASCAR's upper tier divisions. They operated out of their shops in Charlotte, North Carolina. The late 1990s found several major business changes take place, including the sale of the iconic 7 Ward duck farms, a business at one time probably the largest duck raising or duck farming operation in the country. They were supplying over 90% of the ducks used by Southern California Chinese restaurants, and that's a lot of mandarin duck. With the untimely passing of Pat in 2003, more changes took place not only in racing but in the business world. Dick was heavily involved in sprint car racing, wingless, winged, and non-wing racing, and the midgets. And when you have a good race car, a competitive race car, we had drivers lined up, and we had some real good drivers, Hall of Fame caliber drivers and champions, including, but not limited to, the late Billy Wilkerson, Ron Schumann, Frank Secret, Rip Williams, Steve Siegel, Paige Jones, Jim Island, Kenny Van Blorgen, and a host of other outstanding drivers. We're all grateful for a ride in a very competitive race car. They competed throughout the West Coast with USAC, BCRA, CRA, NARC, and the World of Outlaws. In 2009, Dick, with the help of his longtime friend, racing legend Parnelli Jones, opened the first phase of the Woodland Auto Display. This display of over 80 history-rich vehicles provides a basis for preserving auto racing history and keeping precious memories alive. The pictorial display itself would be hard to duplicate. And if you haven't been there, it's right on State 46, right at Airport Drive, just on the outskirts of Paso Robles. One thing we have to admire about our honoree, and a lot of us have been involved or still involved in short track racing, but Dick never lost the sight of short tracks and the grassroots of racing. As a firm believer in the diversity program, this year we found the Woodland Auto Display entry taking part in the Chili Bowl with driver Mark Lowry. The emphasis of the diversity program, of course, is not on what you are, but who you are. Today we find Dick and Claudia generously helping future leaders in their education endeavors. Our inductees and contributions to sport of auto racing as an owner, driver, sponsor, and good all-around supporter has not been forgotten by the great number of those in the community in and out of auto racing who can say they got their start to become successful through his inspiration, motivation, faith, trust, and generosity. As a great humanitarian, always going the extra mile, he still makes time to serve on several boards, including, but not limited to, the executive board of the Directors National Sprint Car Hall of Fame and Museum, the National Midget Racing Hall of Fame, and the West Coast Stock Car Hall of Fame. He wears many hats, but wears them very well. Currently sponsors the Woodland Auto Display Fast Time Awards, covering 60 races for the USAC CRA Sprint Cars, USAC West Coast Sprint Cars, and USAC Western States Midgets. In this day of specializing, it'd be hard to find someone who has raced from the very top, with the top tiers of NASCAR racing, the ARCA, the Jalopies, the hardtop modifieds, super modifieds, the midgets, sprint cars, Silver Crown, dirt modifieds. We're all very grateful that we had someone capable of doing so many good things for the sport of auto racing. When I think of our honored inductee, I think of the times that Dick was first getting involved in racing, the very popular song in the 1960s, Jackie DeShannon's What the World Needs Now, and I'll paraphrase that to bring it up to date. What the world needs now, or today, we need more Dick Woodlands. At the end of the day, when the wins and losses become history and records are made to be broken, your accomplishments often on the track will long be remembered as a legacy. We'll always remember and cherish you as a person who represented the sport of auto racing in life in a most professional and classy way. You hope you will remember this historic evening as one of your highlights of your brilliant career. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, our next inductee, Richard Dick Woodland.
Well, thank you, Kenny. That was outstanding. You made me sound like somebody I'd like to meet. No, I heard that I was being inducted some 2 or 3 months ago, and I thought that would give me ample time to come up with something brilliant or witty to say. Our Hall of Fame is truly an honor. I'd like to thank first off, the nominating committee, the board of directors, and old friend, no, that's not correct. It takes, depending on how you look at it, a sacrifice or love of it, but those around you have to be supportive and involved as well, and I've been very fortunate there. I've been surrounded by a great group, and one I'd like to introduce tonight is really more, I call her my extended family, and it's Ann Wilkerson. And Ann, could you stand up, please? Ann and her late husband, Billy, we were just talking today, I guess we go back over 50 years, and out of that, Ann would have to tell us, but I think that some form or another, we had a partnership or a racing relationship for probably 30 years or so, 25 at least, and great times, and thank you for all, she's been there, she's been family, it's not just the racing, it's been for all the ups and downs, and fortunately there's been more ups, but thank you, Ann. Table 23 is where we seated all the heathens, and Kenny, I'm glad to hear that it's going well over there, because I told him if it gets out of hand, he could move over to our table. But I have 4 children. We started dragging them to the races, their mother and I think the oldest, Robert, was 2 weeks old, and never let up. It was a family affair as much as we could, and it went from the dirt tracks, the Ascots and the various tracks, and then into the stock car program, traveling all over the country. And I appreciate them so much for allowing their father to, follow or chase his passion and chase his dream, really. And I think some of it's rubbed off, but anyway, Robert, Jeanette, Rich, Patrick, would you stand, please? And next is my best friend, also happens to be my wife, Claudia. Your turn. Claudia was there in the Kearney Bowl days, the Hog Heaven days. I was out trying to knock fences down. Then she was there for the sprint cars and the Ascot days, and into the stock cars with Rich Jr. and so on and so forth. But what a lot of you don't know about her is that way, way back, she spent a lot of time working at Riverside Raceway under Les Richter. And there was a young guy there working with her named Kid Clapp. So you can imagine how many years we all go back. I'd like to close this and say a big thank you for those that made tonight possible. We have the Gateway Motorsports Park and the South Point Resort and Casino. This honor is something I'm always going to cherish, and you've made possible an evening I'll never forget. Well, thank you.
Well, let's move on quickly now to our next inductee. Please welcome to the stage our next presenter, Mr. Tim Huddleston.
Well, first off, I'd like to thank Ken Clapp. What an amazing party you've put on here. Let me tell you, you guys and the board of directors of the West Coast Stock Car Hall of Fame definitely put on a gala that we'll remember forever. So I'm up here to induct Orrin Prosser. The front cover of the May 1979 Stock Car magazine says, "World's greatest stock car driver ever, Orrin Prosser," with a question mark. Well, I'm up here to tell you that he is the world's greatest stock car driver. And I'm going to tell you that he won over 1,000 feature main event wins in 30 years, 5 straight championships at the famous Sauga Speedway, won the first ever Firecracker 400, a 100-lap race at 4 different tracks on 4 consecutive days. I mean, think about that. We run 100-lap race in a weekend, and it's too much. 400-lap main events over 4 days, and he won them all. Won every race and won the Firecracker 400. Pretty amazing. He also won the very first Saugus 330. It was a 330-lap main event win. Pretty amazing in those days to run 330 laps at a third mile. Very flat. Some people say counter flat coming out of turn 3, anybody that's ever been to Sauga Speedway. Amazing history of winning. On dirt tracks, they would take the same car, race it Saturday night at Sauga Speedway, load it up, and go to Ascot on Sunday and race it. The same exact car. Take the windshield out, put a chain across the grill in the front, change the tires, and keep racing. Amazing. And I've got the scrapbooks and the trophies to show all of the races that he's won. So pretty amazing. But he's also a really tough guy. And I'll tell you, as newbie into the family, right after I married his daughter, we're up at a lake vacation one day, and nobody could find the potholders. Well, casserole was ready, and it was time to eat. That's the toughest guy in the world. Reached in there and grabbed that casserole and put it up on the table and said, "It's time to eat." Let me tell you, you definitely mind your P's and Q's after that, you know. So many years of all the racing that I did, he used to sit around and tell me, you know, when you're on the racetrack, you just got to visualize. Everybody out there is in your way. Every now and again, when some of those guys that were in his way came over to talk to him about it afterwards, he just would simply smile and say, "Sorry, man, I was in a hurry." And he was able to get a lot of race wins that way. Well, let me tell you, what a humble guy, you know. Not much for the limelight, and we had to do a lot of work to get him dressed up handsome like that and come out here tonight and be able to talk to you guys. And there was a story many years ago that he was actually with his wife at the time at a gas station. And they were standing there talking to the guy that was pumping the gas. And he says, "Oh, yeah, you're a race fan?" He said, "Yeah, oh, yeah, I love racing. I go to Saugus all the time. Great friends with Jimmy Inslow and Orrin Prosser. He's a great friend of mine." He goes, "Oh, really?" Just he had his credit card in his hand. And he says, "You know what?" He slid that credit card back in and paid the guy cash. He didn't want to embarrass that guy. You know, how pretty cool is that, right? What a humble guy. So, you know, many times in life, the merry-go-round goes around and the golden ring is there. Sometimes the reward of the golden ring is too much to risk. Many times with a guy of his caliber and his race wins out here on the West Coast, the phone rang all the time. Those East Coast boys were calling him all the time to come. And that golden ring came, and he turned the phone calls down time and time again because he didn't want to leave his family. Orrin Jr., Doreen, Lisa, his youngest daughter, my wife. Pretty cool, great family I got to marry into. So I would like to take this time to give him the golden ring that he didn't take all those years. I'd like to introduce you to Orrin Prosser and induct him into the West Coast Stock Car Hall of Fame.
Okay. Wow, that was, that's going to be pretty hard to top, but, but I got the greatest kids, grandkids, son-in-laws, daughter-in-laws in the world. I know you think you do, but mine are the best. And that was, you know, it's tough to get here, but it's very humbling, and I'm very proud. But everybody knows that you can't get here by yourself, so. Acting like a big shot, and luckily they hired a new, after about, I think about 2 or 3 years, they hired a new chief steward named Eddie Pagan. He ran the whole thing. They hired him because the whole racetrack was going to hell. Nobody could control anybody, and so he took me aside one day and said, "Hey, what's the matter with you? Why don't you pull your head out of your rear and stop trying to bend the rules and just go and race? You'll be fine. Don't try and be somebody you aren't." So luckily I listened to him, because I didn't listen to anybody in those days. And everything started falling together, and started winning a few races and drove for many different people, and started having a little success, won a championship, and then I started traveling around more and more and more. We got up to Sacramento on the mile, where I met Ken Clapp. And Eddie Pagan came to me and he says, "Hey, you ever been on a mile before?" And I says, "Hell no." And he says, "Well, when I go out there, you just follow me." So I said, "Okay." So I follow him, we're warming up, and, you know, we're running along. You run it in high gear, got a 456 gear or whatever. And I said, "This is nothing, you know." And then the green flag came out. Oh, wham! Everybody passed me. My windshield went blank, and they were throwing mud at me like, "Jesus, what's going on?" So finally, I got onto that, and that ended up being my favorite track. And so I drove for many different people, but the most influential person that in my whole racing adventure, I guess, couldn't have been a career because I had a job the whole time. And this guy came to the races, and some guy came up to me and says, "Hey, there's a guy over there at the fence that wants to talk to you." And so I went over there, and I met this guy, Don Johnson, and he says, "I want to build a car, and I want to know if you want to drive it." And I said, "Hell yes, I'll drive anything. If it's got 4 wheels, I'll drive it." So that ended up to be a 20-year union that, I mean, he was the greatest to me. If I said, I heard of these cardboard tires that were supposed to be pretty good, he'd say, "Where do I get them?" He'd never question me. If somebody says, "Hey, what's the matter with that guy? He ran into me." He says, "Well, you probably weren't going fast enough then." Couldn't do anything wrong. He was the greatest. His family and my family went water skiing together. He even got me to go to church a couple of times. And so it ended up to be a really great time together. We won 4 championships together, met great people, saw a country that I would never see before, ever, if I didn't race. And he always made me proud, and if I had it to do over again, I don't think I'd change anything. Thank you very much.
Moving on now to our next inductee. Please welcome to our podium a gentleman who is already a member of our West Coast Stock Car Hall of Fame, the High Plains Drifter. Please welcome Rick Carelli.
Afraid to lose control, caught up in this world. I've wasted time, I've wasted breath.
Well, good evening, everybody. And obviously, I get to induct a really good friend of mine. It was a big part of my racing career in, 1990 all the way through up. Really good friends. But a little path that I was flying out here today thinking about all the things to say and write down and think about what we were going to do and stuff like that. But I'm going to share a little stuff about Joe Garrone that probably a lot of you don't know and do know. But it was a good thing years ago I found out that my uncle and his father were best friends. So this is one thing that kind of bonded us together. When we got involved in racing, Marshall Chesron had a race team in 1989. He started it, and the biggest one that I wanted to get involved was Joe Garrone. He's the kind of guy that kind of went out and built his own race cars, had his own mechanic shop, worked with his dad. His mother used to race. They had the number 120. They used to race at Lakeside Speedway where I started racing. And this is one thing that me and him got together, and we created this race team, Marshall Chesron, 1990 to 1995. We had an opportunity to win Southwest Tour Championship, Winston West Championship, first truck race that they ran in Tucson. I think we accumulated about 20, maybe 30 wins in a touring division, probably 50-some races together as a group. But the biggest thing we got to do is every weekend we drove the trailer. It's something that everybody said nobody could do in Denver, Colorado. So in Denver, Colorado, we got an opportunity that somebody gave us the opportunity, Marshall, to give us that opportunity to get out there and start running. So we logged a lot of laps together in a trailer, a lot of laps on the racetrack, and a bunch of memories that we went through. We had a lot of good times together, a lot of bad times together, a little hard-headedness together. There's times we walked around the shop and maybe didn't speak to each other for a week because he had his way, I had my way, but it was an opportunity that it shows me that it's a great opportunity that when he left and moved on, he started the pit crew that we had at Chevron Racing. He went on to be a good pit crew member. He went on to NASCAR to implement a bunch of safety devices that we have now. Then he got involved with Bonnie Visser, I think in 2005. He has an opportunity. He's been there with a team that says, here we go again, nobody can make this happen. Joey had a really good influence with Barney. He had a great vision. They started a race team out there that was actually, I think it was a Big Sur waterbed that he had actually, that he started there. And it was a pole barn, basically, I don't know, probably 30,000 square feet. He ended up putting a chassis dyno in it, a 7-post, built it with all kinds of different drivers and all kinds of different people. And then all of a sudden, he leads it on to be the first Monster Energy Cup championship that took place last year. So to me, that's really not a surprise working with him for so many years that I worked with him, because his drive was always driving farther and pushing and pushing. Me and him pushed each other beyond limitations, to be honest with you. So it was a great honor for me to be involved with him. We've shared really good times, like I said, and some bad times, and we got a bunch of secrets that we're never going to break out and let anybody know. But the biggest thing is I want to induct, welcome Joey to this class. And it's a great friend. He's going to always be a great friend. And, we got many years together with it and hopefully many more.
Well, thank you, Rick. Thank you, Ken Clapp, and the board of directors that voted me into this. And I have to say the same thing that several others have said. When I heard about this, I'm like, me? I'm this kid out of Denver, Colorado that grew up in his dad's garage. As Rick's, there's not a whole lot to say much more. Rick pretty well covered it, but the shock was substantial, because I just don't look at myself as being that guy. But the one thing that I did realize, I mean, I don't have talent enough to drive, and I think of a Hall of Famer as being that guy that's won championships, races, and just done spectacular things like most of the people we've heard of tonight, that some I didn't even, I couldn't even imagine being in the same group with. So the one thing that my mom and dad had taught me early on was to surround yourself with the right people. With everybody here. I got to tell a story about Rick, if I can just take a minute, because all the time that I had on the West Coast obviously was with Rick. It was about 6 years, 7 years, something like that. Rick, as he alluded to, our families were good friends, Italians, the old Italian neighborhood. There's some old family stories we can't talk about probably. But when we finally bumped into each other, he helps me out. I'm racing on the dirt. Rick says, he needed a carburetor built. My dad built a carburetor for him. And Rick was wanting, I think you were running in the Tour at the time. We went to a race in Odessa, Missouri, I-70 Speedway. Rick helped me with springs and the setup that I needed in the car. I don't think I'd been on asphalt yet. So I came right off the dirt track to this high banked, real rough racetrack with racing against gasoline engines. I've got an alcohol motor, too much car, not enough experience. We get out there, it rains. I get a couple of laps on the racetrack, not enough cars to fill the field, so they start the whole field. And here I am. Oh, this track shouldn't have been there. So the race starts about 10 laps, I might be generous. I start getting a blue and white flag, a blue flag with a cross on it. I don't know what this is. I've never seen this flag before. Not just because you don't use them on the dirt track generally. So all of a sudden the red flag comes out. And I had a feeling I was involved in this. I really did. I'm thinking, what the heck? I came around, there's Rick up in 1 and 2, crashed. And he'd come to find out he'd been trying to pass me. So I come down pit road. His pit crew is doing everything they can to get in my car and take my head off my body. It was horrible. I get out of the pits. I break my car. I come in. At the end of the race, I had to do what your dad tells you. I had to man up and go face Rick. So I had to wear my glasses because, of course, I was half teared up because he helped us get there. You know, this is my dream. And I'm walking up to him. He's walking me. And I'm thinking, this is it. I'm going to be laying on the ground. And he says, hey, Buckwheat. And I'm like, I'm so sorry, Rick. And I'm carrying on. He says, stop. He says, it's my fault. And I said, what? And he said, I didn't tell you to put a mirror in your car. On the dirt, we never ran a mirror. I didn't know. I needed him to run into the back of me or something so I knew he was there. And that's what he said. He said, I should have just moved you out of the way. Wouldn't have been a problem, but I was trying not to wreck you, and I wrecked myself. And tapped me on the shoulder, and we walked away. On my way after that, on my way back to my pit, I said, I'm going to go to work for him someday. So I told him that shortly after that, and sure enough, a year later, I closed my garage business down in a week's time and was working with Rick after that. And by the way, the story about not talking for a week was a true story. I would not talk to him. He wouldn't talk to me. Anyway, thank you. Really appreciate it. This is a great honor.
You know, we're really proud of our West Coast Stock Car Hall of Fame and the fact that you folks take the time to come visit us here on this busy racing weekend here in Northern California. If you're going out to New Hampshire later this summer into the fall, I encourage you to go visit the Northeast Motorsports Museum. It's a fantastic facility, and our good buddy who's our next presenter is the reason why it even exists. This gentleman who is going to be our presenter, he and I have spent many times together, day and night, on pit road, holding a lot of microphones, sharing the same logo, whether it was at CBS Sports, Fox Sports, Speed Channel, all the way back to the old TNN days. Please welcome the man who made the Northeast Motorsports Museum happen, my good buddy, Dr. Dick Bergen.
Gosh, I appreciate a plug. I really do. I have been to a lot of these Hall of Fame things all over the country, literally. And this, Ken Clapp, you have really got it going on here. Ladies and gentlemen, what a wonderful evening. Ken, thank you. Thank you very much. Greg Pursley and Heidi, his wife of 27 years, grew up across the street from each other. As the daredevil, as a very young child, Greg built jumping ramps for his bicycle and persuaded the other neighborhood children, including his wife eventually, to lie down between the ramps and then rode through the air over the top of all of them. Heidi said Greg was viewed as the neighborhood smart guy, being so proficient at everything he did that the other kids had complete confidence that they'd be safe as he went over them with the bicycle. From the bicycle, he later moved into motorcycle racing. Racing was a natural for Greg, since his father, Russ, who's with us tonight, was crew chief in high-end motorsports. Greg grew up at racetracks. Working with his dad, he learned mechanics, the importance of race car setup, skills. His father worked with Mickey Thompson and in the Trans Am series. Greg said his biggest help in his career was being around his dad when he was a kid. But despite winning 15 motorcycle races in a row, Racing motorcycles is dangerous business, even for a big winner like Greg Pursley. And sure enough, in a crash, he broke his leg, which put Greg in a wheelchair for 2 months. Thinking it harder to fall out of a car than off a motorcycle, in 1992, he took a sportsman car to Willow Springs. In that first ever start in a race car, Greg qualified second and finished second. Turned out he could drive cars as well, or even better, than he could race motorcycles. As Heidi says, her husband can do anything well. Racing his own stuff, Greg ran out of money from time to time, and he had to quit. But car owners saw his potential, and he became a hired stock car driver. He calls himself fortunate to have been signed to drive for well-funded teams that had good stuff. But if a driver is truly exceptional, and Greg Pursley is certainly that, good teams will find him. Greg didn't find rides. Rides found Greg. When Kurt Busch went big league NASCAR, Greg was invited to the Star Nursery team on the Southwest Tour. It was a top ride, and Greg made the most of it. He won the Super Late Model Championship at Irwindale, beating Gene Price's team, whose car was driven by Gene's son, Mike. Greg asked Gene if he could run the team's backup car in the upcoming Toyota All-Star Showdown at Irwindale. He got the ride. He won that race. If you were there, you know how big those races were, those showdown events at Irwindale. Greg had a lot of success at Irwindale, winning NASCAR's 2004 Weekly Series Championship. Beat drivers all over the country, 65 tracks, over 1,600 drivers, and Greg's records were better than any of them. And driving for Gene Price, he won twice what's now called the K&N Pro Series Championship. He finished in the top 3 in points in each of his last 4 years in that series. 3 NASCAR championships, 3 invitations to glorious year-end black tie celebration awards dinners. Most drivers only hope to attend one of those functions, and Greg became a regular at them. I was MC for all 3 of those events, so I heard his speech each time, and I can tell you it was beautifully delivered and powerful. You'd have been proud of your West Coast guy. Few drivers have won NASCAR's weekly championship and a NASCAR Touring Series championship. Winning any NASCAR championship is a big accomplishment, but to win the nationwide Weekly Series championship and 2 touring championships is nearly impossible. A dream for most, a reality for Greg Pursley. Greg's car owner, Gene Price, wishes he could be here tonight, but Gene's at home in Arizona recovering from surgery. He told me that in 2008, Greg had bought a K&N car that had no engine and no transmission, and Greg had asked for Gene's help, and help came. Who could turn Greg Pursley down after all? And off they went to a race in Iowa. They had such a good time, a team was born, a team that broke records, won races, and won championships. Some statistics. In the K&N Pro West Series, in 100 starts, Greg won 20 races and the series championship in 2011 and 2014. In the Southwest Series, he won twice. He won over 100 features in his career. If you watched him, you know that guy was smooth, incredibly smooth. However did he charge the corner the way he did and not wind up in the fence? From the beginning, Greg had wanted the big league. I've seen many come and go in NASCAR's top divisions, and I'm absolutely positive he'd have made it big in the NASCAR Cup Series, if only he had been younger when he got noticed. By the time NASCAR's big league team owners found Greg Pursley, they were looking for drivers who were so young they were barely out of their diapers. With so much success behind him, with the cost of racing getting crazy, with Gene's decision to quit fielding cars, it was time to go. Greg Pursley had heard the applause of the crowd on so many nights, standing in victory lane, holding the checkered flag in one hand and the trophy in the other. It was a wondrous career. And so I asked him what he treasured most from all that racing and all that winning. And I expected to hear about a race won with a broken car, or maybe about a track that had eluded him on which he had finally won. But he said his greatest treasure is the friendships made in the sport. Start to finish, he said, racing is one great family. That in family includes the fans in the stands and all of you in this room. All of us here admire Greg Pursley, not just for the racer he was, but for the man he is. He's certainly someone we all look up to and admire. Greg had heart surgery on Tuesday in his home with his wife Heidi, recuperating. Accepting for Greg is his son Tyler, who was part of his race team. And dare I tell you, Tyler and his wife Nicole are going to have a baby in September. Could you ever imagine either Greg or Heidi Pursley as grandparents? They always seemed so young. Tyler Pursley, please accept this honor on behalf of your father. I want to break with what we've been doing all night for a moment, and please, before the trophy and all the rest of it, let everybody know how Dad's doing.
So my father is home. He's in recovery. The surgery went well, so he's just resting for 10 more days. It's hard keeping him on the couch. So first and foremost, my father would like to thank you all for being here tonight and thank the West Coast Stock Car Hall of Fame. And thank you and congratulations to all you guys who have been inducted. He would also like to thank Dick Berggren for making a huge interest in his, genuine interest in his career. He would also like to thank his dad and my grandfather, who's in the crowd, Russ Pursley, for getting him into stock car racing. He's been very fortunate to have great car owners throughout the year, and he would like to owe a huge thank you to Gene and Jamie Price for his West Coast career. He would also like to thank Jerry Pitts and Jeff Jefferson and the Jefferson brothers, who are in this crowd tonight, as a big contribute to his success. He's very fortunate to have won 3 championships in the NASCAR series, one in 2004, one in 2011, and one in 2014, and have, like Dick said, over 100 stock car race wins. He would like to thank all of his crew members over the years and their families that made all of this possible. He would like to thank all of GPM and, He'd like to thank all of GPM, all of his team, their families, and everyone at the shop that made this possible. GPM is not a shop, we are a family. We won all the races out of that shop from everyone, all their hard work, dedication. It was a big, big victory for us. So again, thank you to everyone who showed up tonight. Thank you to the NASCAR Hall of Fame, and thank you to everyone and their families that made this possible.
Well, did you folks have a good time tonight? Good. One final, if I could, just before we close out the night. Could you please give Marissa Holmes a nice round of applause for helping us out up here on the stage? Her first year working with us, and she did a great job. Thank you, Marissa, for helping us out. What a great class, right? For 2018, a lot of big names going in once again into the West Coast Stock Car Hall of Fame. On behalf of our entire board of directors, we're so thankful that all of you could join us here once again as we inducted another stellar class. I'm Ralph Sheheen. Thank you all for coming and look forward to seeing you in 2019.
2018 West Coast Stock Car Hall of Fame. We just concluded a great ceremony where we inducted 11 different people into the Hall of Fame, including this guy to my right here, Orrin Prosser. And what does it mean to you to be a part of this West Coast Stock Car Hall of Fame?
This is a big deal, the biggest celebration in my racing. You know, I mean, I've won some big races and long races and special races and all that, but nothing like this. The ring really means something.
Well, and what was so interesting about all these inductees is so many of them raced at the weekly level or were involved with weekly tracks. And I know that a place like Saugus, a weekly speedway, was so important to your career. How important is it that we keep those weekly tracks strong?
Oh, that was I'm still, I was a short track racer and I'm still a short track racer. And I think myself, short track racing is the roots of racing as well as the most exciting and best to watch.
And we heard and we read in the book as well that you had a stretch where you won 4 consecutive 100-lap races in a row. What does that take, not only as a driver but as a team with your help, to be able to accomplish something like that?
Well, that was a great deal because we were a low-budget race team. Everybody worked together, and it was 4 different races, 4 different days, consecutive days. And I tell you, by the end of the 4 days, we were tired. We'd go home and sleep for 2 hours, get back on the road. And then after the 4th race that we won, we went right back to Saugus because we didn't have spare motors and all this extra parts and stuff. And 5 laps into the warm-up session, the motor spilled all over the track. So it was a great feat. Nobody else will ever do it. And we were just lucky to be the ones that did it.
And what can you say about the rest of this class? I know it's a lot of guys that you've raced around and been around throughout your career. What can you say about the rest of this great class we have here today?
Yeah, I was... when I came here, you know, I was very scared. I got F's in public speaking in school all the time, so I didn't know what the hell I was going to do up there. So I told my friends all said, my high school buddies that I still see, they said, hey, you're going to the Hall of Fame. That's great, you know. And I said, I'm a little bit nervous about the whole thing. And they said, oh, you'll be fine. You're so old, they won't remember you anyway.
Well, and Tim did a great job introducing you as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, Tim is the greatest. Like I said, up there, my kids, my grandkids, my son-in-laws, my daughter-in-laws, they're the best. And besides, I don't care what anybody else says, theirs is always the better, but mine is the best.
Well, Orrin, it's a pleasure to meet you. Thanks for your contributions to the West Coast stock car scene, and congratulations on being a Hall of Famer.
Thanks very much. I'm very humble and very proud.
What a great class. 11 drivers, car owners, media people, 11 of the best inducted into the 2018 West Coast Stock Car Hall of Fame. Thanks a lot. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Madera driver here at the 2018 West Coast Stock Car Hall of Fame. Our driver second in the Pro Late Model points, Matt Erickson. And what an awesome event to be a part of. What does it mean to you as a Madera driver to be a part of something like this?
Yeah, it was actually pretty cool. First time coming here, so hopefully we could keep it going, come down the road and everything. But I got to change that second in points and get Austin these next couple races here because second just sucks.
Well, both you guys that are second in the points, so Zampa in the junior late models and yourself in the pro late models, both have a couple of wins and a couple of DNFs. So what do you got to do to get the season to go a little bit more consistently for you?
I just got to stay on my A game. We found a little something better on the cars, so hopefully it works at Madera. It worked last weekend at Roseville. And I just got to be consistent, and hopefully he has some bad luck and just out-qualify him and get every little bonus points that we can.
So you won two $5,000 to win races this year. Is that as good as winning the $10,000 to win, or is that still on your bucket list, if you will?
That's still on the bucket list. When it comes to October, I think we've only finished maybe 2 races out of all the October races we've done. So I got to get that monkey off my back, and hopefully this year we get it.
Now, you've been a part of this late model scene for a while in California, going back to Altamont in the mid-2000s as Austin and his team are trying to mess with us here. And you can probably speak a little bit to how the late model scene has evolved and as it's grown as well. What's the late model scene like in California right now?
It's probably the strongest it's been, and the competition's a lot better. I mean, I've won 6 races in the series before, but the competition back then to now is a lot more stiff. So if you win now, you must be doing something right.
And tell us who you'd like to thank for your season so far.
Stop Tech, Brakes, Fluidine, AR Bodies, MJ Gilbert Construction, my dad, my crew and everybody that helps me out, AR Bodies, Jags, and Brian's going to get a boot here in a minute.
I think the Herzog team's earning a bumper at the next race here, but Matt Erickson, second in the points in Madera, another one of our Madera visitors here today at the West Coast Stock Car Hall of Fame. Back to you guys. Thanks a lot. You held in there. Back to the 2018 West Coast Stock Car Hall of Fame. Standing by with one of the guys that makes this all happen, Ken Clapp. And talk about the growth of this event. Almost 400 people here. You must feel pretty proud today.
I didn't actually know the count. I thought it was a little over 400, but I'll settle for almost 400. But we had a lot of fun putting it together. I never knew when I committed to kind of head this gala up, it turns into a full-time job. But I've got a lot of help and a lot of dedication from others, and we just have a lot of fun. But most important to me is all the people here have fun.
So we had 11 inductees this year. I know you've been around the sport for a long time, promoted a lot of racetracks. but do even you get a little surprised at some of the stories you hear and some of the people that we found that are worthy of being in the Hall of Fame?
Not too much, because I knew most of those stories. A lot of them we can't tell. I kind of stuck my neck out tonight when I divulged that Herschel McGriff dated Marilyn Monroe, but he did, and things like that are fun. That's what this business is all about. We have fun.
But at the same time, not only are we seeing the strength of what happened in the past, it's so cool having a lot of younger drivers here to soak this up, and you must be pretty excited about seeing the youth that's coming into the sport at the same time.
I can't even put it into words. You know, a lot of people worried, what are we going to do after Richard and Dale Sr. and Waltrip and Cale and so on, Bobby Allison? Well, I don't think we have a problem. I think we got a lot of talent coming at us. Maybe more than we can handle. I don't know. It's great.
Where do you see the Hall of Fame going into the long term? Obviously, some of the talk in some of our interviews about maybe having a permanent display somewhere, but also even for this banquet, you're running out of room here.
Well, here's where I am. This is a passion, and the fact that we can recognize persons that have gone above and beyond, just it's what it's all about. However, if you have a permanent Hall of Fame, you've got a water bill, you've got a light bill, you've got a security bill, a maintenance bill. We're running a virtual Hall of Fame. We've got a pretty nice website. I'm not opposed to a permanent location. We've had multiple offers. Kern County Raceway, Phoenix, Auto Club Speedway, here in this area, Northern California, Dick Woodland down with the Estrella Museum. But we're going to kind of stick with our deal right now. And I'll tell you one of the reasons. We get a lot of delight out of giving money to military, children, animals. And we'll be at $500,000 in just over 4 years by the first part of 2019. And I want to keep doing that. I don't want to discontinue that. But my fear, to be honest, is if we do go to a permanent location without a very, very hefty sponsor, we can't do the gifting anymore. And it's more important to me to feed hungry kids and help veterans that have risked their life than it is to have a solid permanent location.
I think that makes a lot of sense. We really appreciate all of your efforts, and what an amazing event and kind of a tribute to all the efforts that you've made on the West Coast throughout your career. And once again, we just thank you for making this all possible.
Well, thank you, Stephen. It's my honor. It's my life. I love it.
Oh, yeah, we can tell he loves it. The passion shows. Ken Clapp, guys, back to you. Thanks a lot, Ken. I appreciate it. We want to thank you guys for tuning in to the 2018 West Coast Stock Car Hall of Fame from the Meritage Resort in Napa, California on the big weekend out there at Sonoma Raceway. A good kickoff for this with 11 deserving honorees, a great night of reunions and laughter and stories. And it was our pleasure to share that with you at home so that you could see the passion that we have for stock car racing here on the West Coast. On behalf of the entire Short Track TV crew, including Kenny Shepard, our producer, I'm Stephen Blakesley, saying so long from the West Coast Stock Car Hall of Fame 2018, and we'll see you at the races.